Am I the a-hole for destroying my best friend's life after she destroyed mine, and didn't even know it? Until it was far too late, I, 35F, didn't plan to ruin anyone's life. I didn't grow up with a thirst for revenge or a deep-rooted desire to destroy someone. But when you realize your entire adult life, your marriage, your family, your sense of safety, was built on someone else's betrayal, sometimes the only way to breathe again is to burn everything to ash. Let me rewind. I met Rachel, 34F, in college. We were roommates freshman year. She was outgoing, hilarious, effortlessly charming, the kind of girl who made friends in elevators and had professors wrapped around her finger by week 2. I was more introverted, bookish, socially awkward. But Rachel took me under her wing, and over the next 4 years, we became inseparable. Maid of honor at each other's weddings, godmothers to each other's children, family vacations together, weekly phone calls, endless texts. She wasn't just my best friend, she was like a second sister, a constant. I married Matt, 38M, when I was 24. He was everything I'd ever wanted, intelligent, steady, loyal, or so I thought. Rachel was ecstatic for us. She cried at our wedding, gave an emotional toast, danced with my father, the whole picture. I trusted her with everything, with secrets, fears, doubts, and I trusted Matt, completely. He was calm, predictable, solid. We built a life, a modest one. We bought a house, had 2 kids, Ava, 10F, and Ben, 7M, hosted dinner parties, scraped by financially but made it work. Rachel was always around, with her husband Tom, 35M, and later their daughter Sadie. Our kids grew up like cousins. Everything started unraveling on a Tuesday. Matt had been distant, not cold, just distracted. More time at work, less intimacy, shorter fuses. I thought it was stress. I asked if he wanted counseling. He said he was fine. I believed him. That Tuesday I got a message on Instagram from an account with no profile photo. Just a single sentence. You should ask your husband about Rachel. I laughed at first. I thought it was spam or some kind of prank. But something about it stayed. It itched at the back of my brain. I didn't say anything. Not at first. But I started watching, listening. Rachel had gotten more involved in Matt's work. He owned a small tech consultancy, and she'd started helping with marketing. Odd but plausible. She had a background in PR. They emailed often, texted more. I saw her name pop up on his phone late at night. I started feeling paranoid. I snooped. Yes, I'll admit it. I went through his phone one night while he slept, found nothing, not a single inappropriate message. Just work-related banter, jokes, some memes. Nothing damning. But then I looked at deleted messages. There it was. An entire second conversation, one he'd erased daily, explicit, intimate, dating back 10 years. 10 years. They'd started sleeping together 6 months after my wedding. When I was pregnant with Ava, he was taking Rachel to cheap motels. When I had postpartum depression, they were planning weekend business trips. When I was hospitalized with complications during Ben's birth, he left early to go let the dog out. I now know he left to go see her. The betrayal didn't even feel real. My hands went cold. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't cry. I just stared at the screen, reading message after message. Jokes about me. Complaints about Tom. Naked photos. Plans. There was one from Rachel from just 3 weeks earlier. If she ever finds out, we'll deny everything. I love you, and Matt replied, she'll never know. She's too trusting. That's why I married her. That broke something in me, but I didn't confront them. Not yet. I needed to know how far it went, so I played along. For 3 months. Installed spyware on Matt's devices. Recorded everything. Emails, keystrokes, camera, audio. I planted an old phone in Rachel's car, hidden under the passenger seat, set to record any time the car moved. I told them I was starting therapy, and feeling better. They thought they were in the clear. Then I started digging deeper, and I found out the worst part wasn't even the affair. It was Ben. I ran a secret paternity test, hair samples from Matt's razor, a swab from Ben's cheek while he slept, sighing. Results came in 5 days later. Matt wasn't the father, but Tom was. Yes, Tom, Rachel's husband. My best friend's husband. The man I'd been friends with for 15 years. The man who was like an uncle to my kids. The man who had no idea his own wife had lied about the entire existence of his son. I thought I would pass out. Ben was conceived. During a 2-month rough patch in our marriage. I'd gotten drunk after a fight and stayed over at Rachel's house while Matt was traveling. Tom had been drinking too. Rachel was out of town. We slept together. Once. It was stupid. I'd felt sick about it ever since. I'd buried it. Convinced myself it meant nothing, that nothing had come from it. But something had come from it. Ben. My son. Whom I loved more than life itself. I'd lied to Tom. Unknowingly. And he deserved to know, so I crafted my revenge. Not out of hatred, but out of a need for justice. A need for truth. It started with the video. I compiled a year's worth of footage, texts, audio, GPS logs, secret recordings of Rachel and Matt talking in her car. One clip where they joked about switching hotel rooms during our family vacation. I burned it all to a USB drive, sent it anonymously to Tom. He filed for divorce within 2 days, took full custody of Sadie, changed his number, told everyone Rachel had cheated, but didn't tell them with who. Then came the party. I hosted a big 10-year anniversary party for Matt and me. He was surprised but thrilled. All our friends came. So did Rachel, grinning, sipping wine, giving me a hug like she hadn't been sleeping with my husband for a decade. I waited until after the toast, then I plugged in a flash drive and played a slideshow for our guests. Except instead of family photos, it was screenshots. Audio clips, video, texts, names, dates, locations. At first people laughed, confused. Then the laughter stopped. Gasps, screams. Rachel dropped her wineglass. Matt ran up to unplug the TV. But it was too late. Everyone saw. Everyone. I stood there, silent, watching their faces collapse. Watching years of deceit unravel in seconds. Then I walked out. Matt was fired from his job a month later. Turns out he'd used company funds for some of their motel rendezvous. Rachel lost her consulting contracts. Her name became toxic in our community. Their kids were bullied at school. She tried to reach out to me once. I blocked her. Tom thanked me quietly. We've had coffee since, just once. As for Ben, I still haven't told him. I will when he's older. He's still my son, always will be. I love him with everything I have. Matt and I are divorcing. He begged for forgiveness, said it didn't mean anything, that he was weak, that I was vindictive. Maybe I was. But after everything, I feel calm. Still, I hear the whispers that I went too far, that I humiliated everyone, that I weaponized trust, that I traumatized the kids. So Reddit, am I the a-hole? Am I the a-hole for ruining my husband's funeral with the truth and turning my children against the man they used to idolize? Let me begin by saying this. I did not plan for things to end this way. I was supposed to stand by his coffin and cry. To pretend for the sake of the children, the family, the legacy, that he had been a good man. But when someone spends decades building a life out of deception and manipulation, sometimes the only peace you can give them in death is the truth they refuse to face in life. My husband, James, 54M, died 6 months ago. It was sudden. A massive heart attack at his office, gone before the ambulance arrived. I, 52F, had just returned from grocery shopping when I got the call from his secretary. At first I thought it was a joke. James was healthy, fit. He worked out 5 days a week. Atikele, took vitamins. His death cracked the ground open under my feet. We'd been married 27 years. We had 3 children together. Emma, 26F, Lucas, 23MA, and Molly, 17F. On the surface, we were a picture-perfect family. James was a successful civil engineer who built half the schools in our district. I was a high school librarian. We had a comfortable home, vacations twice a year, college funds, golden retrievers, the works. People admired us, envied us even. Power couple, they'd say. Solid. Real love. But I lived in the shadows of that image, and so did our children, only they didn't know it yet. James was respected, but behind closed doors he was a tyrant, not physically abusive, no, but emotionally, controlling, cold, calculating. He knew how to make you feel like you were always falling short, that your achievements were his, your failures yours alone. He gaslit me for years, undermined my parenting, eroded my confidence. He told our children I was too soft, too emotional, not smart enough to make big decisions. They listened to him because they loved him, because they didn't see the way he spoke to me in private, the way he weaponized their affection against me. He was a master of performance. He also had affairs, at least 3 that I knew of during our marriage. Always with women from his office, always denied, always explained away as crazy stalkers or misunderstandings. The first time I found evidence, emails, receipts, hotel records, he told me I was digging for drama. The second time he accused me of being insecure. The third time I left for 2 weeks and stayed with my sister. He brought the kids to me, crying, confused, asking why I was abandoning them. He was always 2 steps ahead, always the hero in the stories he rewrote. Eventually, I stopped fighting. I stayed. For the kids, for the stability. Because I didn't know who I was without him, after 2 decades of being shaped by him. Because he convinced me I was weak. Because deep down, I was afraid. When he died, something inside me cracked open. At first, I mourned. Not for the man, but for the version of him I'd tried so hard to believe in. For the life I thought we'd had. The loss was real, but it wasn't grief. It was relief, dressed in shame. Then, 2 weeks after the funeral was announced, I got a letter from a woman named Mara, 33F. She said she was James's partner, that she'd been with him for almost 7 years, that they lived together in an apartment in a nearby city 3 days a week. When James said he was working on a long-distance project, she included photos of them on vacation, at dinner, at our daughter's piano recital, standing in the back. She knew everything, and she wasn't alone. She had a daughter, Lily, 5F, James's daughter. I remember reading that part 5 times, my hands shaking. The paper wet with tears. James had a second family. He had split his life so cleanly, so surgically, that not even our children noticed. His lies had been meticulous, deep, calculated, and yet he'd left them with nothing. Mara had no legal recourse, no insurance, no claim to his estate. He'd kept her in the dark about his will, his assets, everything. She was devastated. She didn't want money. She wanted acknowledgement. For Lily. For the truth. She didn't know how to tell her daughter that her father had died when she wasn't even allowed to come to the funeral. I sat with that letter for a week, and then I made a decision. The day of the funeral came. Packed church. Hundreds of people. Colleagues, students, neighbors. My children sat in the front row, teary-eyed, clinging to each other. I sat next to them, numb. James's brother gave a eulogy. So did Lucas. People spoke of integrity, loyalty, family. I let them. I waited. Then I stood, and I told the truth. I told the crowd that James was not the man they thought he was, that he had been cruel, that he had lied, that he had manipulated me, our children, everyone around him, that he had led a double life, that he had another daughter, 5 years old, who had never known a father who could love her openly. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I spoke plainly, calmly. The room was silent. Mara was there, in the back. I had invited her. I introduced her, and Lily. People gasped. A woman sobbed. James's mother fainted. Emma stormed out. Lucas sat frozen. Molly stared at me like I'd murdered Santa Claus. Later that night, all 3 of my children screamed at me. Why would you do that? Why would you ruin everything? He's dead. He can't defend himself. Emma refused to speak to me for 2 months. Lucas moved out. Molly stopped coming home after school. But slowly. The fog lifted. Emma came back first. She read the letters James had written me, the ones where he blamed me for miscarrying our 4th child, where he said I'd cursed our family. She apologized. We cried together. Lucas followed, quietly. He admitted he remembered strange gaps, excuses, that he'd always felt like something was off. Molly took the longest. She was the closest to James, the last to see the mask crack. But she came to me one night in tears, holding a photo of Lily. She looks like me, she whispered. Now, all 3 of my children know the truth. They've met Lily. They've begun to process everything. It's slow, messy, but real. Some people say I should have let James go peacefully, that I should have let the lie die with him. That funerals are for healing, not reckoning. But what kind of healing can happen in a house built on falsehood? So, Reddit. Am I the a-hole for ruining my husband's funeral with the truth and turning my children against the man they once loved? Am I the a-hole for telling my daughter the truth about her father and destroying her entire worldview? This is going to be long and, I fear, unforgivable. I've been sitting on this secret for over 2 decades, and I knew, eventually, it would come out. But I never expected it would happen the way it did, and now I've upended the life of the one person I swore to protect above all else. I didn't just hurt her, I fractured her entire identity. So, I need to know if I did the right thing. In the end, or if I'm just trying to justify 23 years of cowardice, I, 47F, have a daughter, Katie, 23F. She's my world, my light. Everything I've done for the past 2 decades has been in service of giving her the life I never had. She's brilliant, compassionate, and stubborn as hell. She graduated college last year and started grad school this fall. I raised her as a single mother, though for most of her life she believed her father, Mark, now deceased, had died when she was a toddler. That was a lie. And the beginning of all of this. Mark and I met in college. We were both seniors, both drifting in our own ways. I had just escaped an abusive household and was trying to reinvent myself. Mark was charismatic and loud, the kind of guy people gravitated toward. He was a theater major with a cult following on campus, the kind who threw wild parties, but still showed up to class hungover and charming. We were opposites. He pursued me hard, and at first it was fun, thrilling even, but within months it got complicated. Mark drank, a lot. He had a temper. He was never physically violent, but he was unpredictable. He'd disappear for days, cheat, then return with flowers and excuses. I broke up with him 3 times before it stuck. The last time I was done with the drama, the manipulation, the chaos, but then I found out I was pregnant. I didn't tell him. I was terrified, broke, barely holding onto a job in a new city, and I couldn't stomach the idea of bringing him back into my life. I knew what kind of father he'd be. I knew what kind of damage he could do, so I made the choice. I'd raise my baby alone. A year and a half later, Mark died. OD, fentanyl-laced heroin, in the back of some stranger's apartment. I never told Katie about the drugs. I just said he'd been sick and passed away when she was little. She had no memories of him. I let her fill in the blanks with fantasy. He loved you so much. He would have been so proud. I showed her old photos, kept the story vague, and let her believe he was the tragic hero in our family's story. It was easier than telling her the truth, cleaner, kinder. But the lie had a weight, and it grew heavier every year. Katie idolized him. She wore his old college hoodie around the house. She told people he was her hero, that he had fought cancer and died too soon. She wrote college essays about the father she lost and how it shaped her resilience. It killed me, but I kept quiet. I told myself it was a harmless lie, that I was preserving her innocence, that I was protecting her from the darkness I'd barely escaped. Then last month she found the box. I'd kept everything, letters, journals, hospital reports, even the police file from those years, hidden away in a locked chest in the attic. She wasn't snooping. She was looking for old photo albums for a family project she was doing in grad school. She called me while I was at work. She was crying, screaming. She'd found the autopsy report, the mugshots, the rehab documents, my journal entries. She found the truth I'd buried. I rushed home. She was waiting at the kitchen table with the entire box laid out like evidence in a courtroom. She didn't say anything for a full minute. Then she asked me one question. Who the hell was my father? And I broke. I told her everything about the abuse, the cheating, the drugs, the arrests, the overdose. I told her I'd lied to protect her, that I couldn't bear to let her grow up knowing her father had been a selfish, destructive man who chose heroin over her. But that wasn't what broke her. What broke her was what I said next. I told her Mark might not even be her biological father, that I had been assaulted, that during a brief separation from Mark, right after one of his many betrayals, I was raped by a man I worked with, a line cook at the restaurant I waited tables at. I never reported it. I froze. I blamed myself. I convinced myself it had been a misunderstanding. But weeks later, I knew I was pregnant, and by the time I'd done the math, I was already back with Mark, who never knew. I had always hoped that Mark was the father. He looked like Katie. Or maybe I just convinced myself he did. DNA testing wasn't something I pursued because it was easier not to know. Katie collapsed in on herself, like I'd pulled the floor out from beneath her entire life. She didn't speak to me for 2 weeks. Then she sent me a text. I got a DNA test, you were right. He wasn't my father. I don't know who I am anymore, I called. She didn't answer. I emailed. Nothing. I waited outside her apartment. She refused to open the door. I left food, I left letters. Then finally last week she agreed to meet. We sat at a park bench for an hour, barely speaking. Then she said, "You stole my life from me." I apologized, again. Told her I'd do anything, that I loved her, that nothing changed how much she meant to me. She said, "Everything changed." And then she left, and I don't know if she's coming back. My sister thinks I should have never told her the full truth, that I should have kept the lie going forever, that I shattered her with my selfish guilt, that I cared more about unburdening myself than preserving the fragile peace she lived in. But others, close friends, my therapist, say the truth was inevitable, that a lie that big was a ticking time bomb, that at least now she can rebuild her life on something real. But I see her face in my sleep, the grief, the betrayal, the brokenness. So Reddit. Am I the a-hole for telling my daughter the truth about her father and destroying the life she thought she had? Am I the a-hole for not allowing my best friend to be my maid of honor after she tried to sabotage my wedding plans? So, I, 26F, am in a pretty tough spot right now, and I need some outside perspective. I've been best friends with Katie, 27F, for over 15 years. We've been through everything together, our awkward teenage years, high school drama, breakups, graduations, you name it. She's been my rock for as long as I can remember, so when I got engaged to my fiancé, Alex, 28M, I immediately knew I wanted Katie to be my maid of honor. She's the one person who knows me better than anyone, and I thought it would be perfect to have her stand by me on one of the most important days of my life. Now, everything was going fine at first. We started planning the wedding about 6 months ago, and I honestly couldn't have been more excited. I picked a beautiful venue. We started thinking about themes, dresses, and of course the bridal party. Katie was incredibly supportive in the beginning, helping me pick out ideas for the dress and encouraging me throughout the process. I was beyond grateful for her enthusiasm. But things quickly started to take a turn. About 2 months ago, things started to feel off. Katie began making passive-aggressive comments about the wedding, especially the guest list and the budget. She complained that there were too many random people on the guest list, some of Alex's family members, and that the venue we chose was too fancy for our group. I understood that weddings can be a lot to manage, and I tried not to let her comments get to me. I assured her that we'd make sure it was a fun day for everyone, and that Alex's family were important to him, so they had to be there. But then, it escalated. Katie started suggesting that I should downgrade some of the features of the wedding. She recommended that I look at cheaper venues, saying things like, "You could easily find a place that looks just as nice but for half the price." She even told me that I should just elope because it would be so much simpler. I thought maybe she was just stressed, but the more she pushed these suggestions, the more I felt like she wasn't being supportive at all. Finally, things came to a head when she made a comment that left me absolutely stunned. We were sitting down together, going through some potential wedding favors, when she said, "You know, Alex isn't really your soulmate. You can do better than him, but whatever. I'll support you, I guess, but I've always thought you could do better." I didn't know how to respond to that. Alex and I have been together for 5 years, and we're incredibly happy. For her to say something like that, especially as my best friend, shocked me. It wasn't just a passing remark, it was a full-blown jab, and it hurt. I tried to brush it off, but I was hurt, and I didn't understand why she would say something like that. She never really liked Alex, but this comment felt different, almost like she was actively trying to undermine my relationship. That's when I started to notice more signs of her undermining the wedding planning. At one point, she even showed up to one of our bridal party meetings late, and when she did arrive, she was wearing a sweatshirt that had the name of a company that I had considered for wedding photos, but had ultimately rejected. It felt like a dig at my decision-making, and I couldn't shake the feeling that she was purposely sabotaging the entire process. The breaking point came when we had a disagreement about the bridal shower. I had wanted to keep it small and intimate, but Katie insisted on inviting way more people, including a lot of people I didn't even know that well. When I told her I didn't feel comfortable with that, she became incredibly upset. She accused me of being controlling and not trusting her to plan the perfect event. She even said that if I didn't let her do things her way, she'd quit being my maid of honor. It was like everything had turned into a battle between what she wanted and what I was trying to do. I ended up having a conversation with Alex about what was going on. He was really concerned because he could see how much Katie's behavior was affecting me. He suggested that I have a serious conversation with her to set some boundaries, and if things didn't improve, maybe I should consider asking her to step down as maid of honor. The idea broke my heart, but after everything that had happened, I realized it might be the only way to salvage the wedding planning process and my mental health. I had the conversation with Katie a week ago. I told her that I felt like she wasn't being supportive, and that some of the things she'd said and done were really hurting me. I explained that I understood if she had concerns, but she needed to express them respectfully, and she couldn't undermine the decisions I was making for the wedding. I also told her that if she didn't respect the boundaries I was setting, I would have to reconsider her role as maid of honor. Katie didn't take this well. She immediately started crying and accused me of attacking her. She said I was being selfish and that I was throwing away our friendship for the sake of a wedding. She told me she wasn't sure she could support me anymore if I was going to be so controlling. She also said that she felt left out of the wedding process and that I had been pushing her away. I was devastated. I had never intended to hurt her, but I knew I had to stand my ground. After that conversation, I took some time to reflect on everything, and I realized that she had consistently tried to overshadow my wedding and make it about her. Her behavior was manipulative, and it felt like she was trying to control the situation rather than supporting me. After much thought, I made the decision to ask her to step down as maid of honor. I told her that while I still loved her as my friend, I couldn't have her be a part of such an important day if she was going to act this way. I offered her a chance to be a guest at the wedding, but she was no longer going to be involved in the planning. Katie was livid. She told me I was being ridiculous and ungrateful for everything she'd done for me in the past. She accused me of choosing Alex over her and said I was acting like a diva. She said she couldn't believe I was doing this over something as trivial as wedding plans. Since then, we haven't spoken. I feel like I've lost my best friend and I'm heartbroken over it. I know that I did what I had to do to protect my happiness, but I can't help but feel guilty for not having her by my side as I walk down the aisle. So, am I the a-hole for asking my best friend to step down as maid of honor after she tried to sabotage my wedding plans? Am I the a-hole for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she tried to destroy my relationship? So I, 29F, have a pretty complicated relationship with my sister, Emma, 32F. We've always had a bit of a sibling rivalry, but I genuinely thought that over the years we had learned to be supportive of each other, especially after I started dating my boyfriend, Jack, 30M, who I've been with for the past 3 years. Everything was going smoothly, until Emma started showing signs of not being thrilled about my relationship with Jack. It started small, Little comments here and there like, "I don't know what you see in him," or "Are you sure he's the one?" I brushed it off, thinking she was just being protective. But as time went on, the comments got more pointed. She'd say things like, "He's kind of too perfect, don't you think? Almost like he's hiding something." Or, "Does he even have a job that's stable? You don't want to get stuck with someone who can't support you." These things were really hurtful, but I didn't want to start drama, so I let it slide. Jack and I were both in the process of buying a house, so naturally I was excited to share the news with my family. We'd found a place that was perfect for us, and I wanted to celebrate with everyone. I told Emma first, hoping she'd be happy for me, but instead, she said something that took me by surprise. She looked at me with a frown and said, "Don't get too attached. You know how quickly things can fall apart, right? You've been with him for 3 years, what's the rush?" It felt like she was actively trying to sabotage my happiness. I didn't know how to respond to that. So I just smiled and changed the subject. But the situation got worse when we were planning our annual family gathering, and Emma pulled me aside. She asked me if she could talk to me in private, and of course I agreed. When we were alone, she told me, "I need to be honest with you. I've been doing some thinking, and I don't think Jack is right for you. I've seen the way he treats you. He's controlling and manipulative. I know it might sound harsh, but you deserve better." I was stunned. I had never in my life seen Jack be anything but loving and supportive toward me. We had our disagreements like any couple, but nothing that would warrant Emma's accusations. "Why would you say that?" I asked her, feeling the sting of betrayal. "Because I know him better than you think," she replied. "I've seen the way he manipulates you, and I've heard the things he's said when you're not around. You just don't notice it because you're so in love with him." She went on to say that she had been doing me a favor by trying to save me from heartbreak. At this point, I was livid. Not only was she insulting my boyfriend, but she was also accusing me of being blind to his flaws when I knew better than anyone how much we loved each other. I told her that she was overstepping, that she didn't know Jack the way I did, and that she had no right to try to control my relationship. That's when things really went off the rails. She said, "I'm not going to stand by and watch you make the biggest mistake of your life. If you don't listen to me, I'm going to make sure Jack knows that I don't approve of him. I can't let you marry someone who's not good for you." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was threatening to go behind my back and sabotage my relationship to make things difficult between Jack and me. I was furious, and I told her that if she was going to act like that, she wouldn't be welcome at my wedding. From that point on, things got even worse. She continued to make comments whenever Jack was around, saying things like, "Jack's probably only with you for your money," or "I bet he's already cheated on you and just hasn't been caught." I started distancing myself from her, but it didn't stop. Every time we had a family gathering or an event, Emma would make subtle digs at Jack, always when I wasn't looking, or when it was just the two of them. And then came the breaking point. A few weeks ago, I found out that Emma had been texting Jack, trying to convince him that I wasn't the right woman for him. She even told him that I had changed over the years and wasn't the person he had fallen in love with. She suggested that he wake up and not marry me because I was too emotionally needy. She was practically trying to break us up. Jack showed me the texts after he confronted her about it, and I couldn't believe it. She had crossed every line imaginable. I told her in no uncertain terms that she was no longer welcome in my life. I said that if she couldn't respect my relationship and my choices, then there was no place for her at my wedding, and frankly, there was no place for her in my life. Emma was furious. She called me a spoiled brat and accused me of throwing away our entire relationship just because I was too blind to see what was in front of me. She said I was being selfish, that I didn't care about my family, and that I was ruining my wedding by not having her by my side. Now my family is divided. My parents think I should cut her some slack because she's just looking out for me and wants what's best for me. My mom even tried to tell me that Emma had always been like this and that I should just talk to her and forgive her. But I can't. Not after everything she's done. My wedding day is one of the most important days of my life, and I can't have someone there who's actively trying to destroy my relationship. The thing is, Emma has since decided to disinvite me from her wedding, saying that if I won't let her be part of mine, then she doesn't want me at hers. I'm heartbroken, but I'm standing my ground. So, am I the a-hole for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she tried to destroy my relationship? Am I the a-hole for exposing my sister's secret affair at our family reunion? So this situation has caused a lot of tension in my family, and I'm struggling to understand if I crossed a line. I, 29F, have a sister, Ella, 32F, who has always been very private and somewhat secretive. We've always had a good relationship, but lately things have been a bit strained, and I think I might have made it worse. Here's the backstory. My family is very close-knit. We've always celebrated big events together, birthdays, holidays, graduations, and we hold a yearly family reunion that's been a tradition for as long as I can remember. Every year, it's hosted by my parents at their house, and everyone comes together for a weekend of food, games, and catching up. It's one of the few times a year when all of us siblings, me, Ella, and our two brothers, are together. Now, the reason I'm asking if I'm in the wrong is because of something that happened at the most recent reunion, which was held just last month. To give some context, for the past several months I'd noticed that Ella had been acting strangely. She seemed distant, her mood was erratic, and she often made vague excuses when we tried to hang out. But I didn't want to jump to conclusions, so I didn't press her on it. I assumed maybe she was just going through something personal, and I gave her space. But then, a few weeks before the reunion, my older brother, Josh, 34M, came to me with some shocking news. He told me that he had caught Ella with a man who wasn't her husband. Ella has been married to Michael, 34M, for almost 5 years, and from what we could tell, they were a happy couple. But apparently, Josh had seen her at a hotel with someone else, and it wasn't just a one-time fling. It had been going on for months. At first, I didn't believe it. I mean, Ella has always been the type of person who's very together. She's successful, responsible, and has a way of handling things that makes it hard to imagine her being unfaithful. But when Josh showed me the screenshots of texts he had somehow found between Ella and this man, it became clear that something was definitely going on. Ella had been having an affair for months, and from what I gathered, it wasn't a casual thing, it was serious. I was in shock. I felt betrayed, not just by Ella, but by the fact that she had been hiding this from the entire family. I couldn't understand why she didn't just tell us if she was unhappy in her marriage. My initial reaction was anger, but I tried to be calm about it. I thought maybe I should talk to her privately before I did anything drastic. But then, something inside me just snapped. The idea of her lying to all of us, especially during such an important family event, made me feel like I needed to confront her. Now, this is where things get tricky. During the family reunion, there was a big dinner, and everyone was gathered around the table, sharing stories and catching up. The vibe was good, but I could tell Ella was acting nervous. She was fidgeting and barely touching her food. My mum noticed and asked her if something was wrong, but Ella brushed it off with a quick, "I'm fine." At some point during dinner, I couldn't hold it in any longer. I stood up and, without really thinking it through, I blurted out in front of everyone, "Ella, why don't you tell them about your little secret affair?" There was a moment of stunned silence. Everyone turned to look at me, and I immediately saw the shock and confusion in Ella's eyes. She looked like a deer in headlights, and my heart sank. But I couldn't back down at that point. I told everyone about the affair, how Josh had discovered it, and how it had been going on for months. Ella's face went pale, and she immediately started crying. She apologized to everyone, but it wasn't a heartfelt apology. It was a mess of excuses, like I was confused and I didn't mean to hurt anyone. My brother Michael was completely blindsided. He had no idea what was going on, and it was clear he was devastated. He stood up from the table and walked out of the room. Ella tried to go after him, but he told her to leave him alone. The rest of the evening was chaotic. Family members were shouting, some people were crying, and my mum was yelling at me for causing such a scene. My dad, on the other hand, was mostly silent but looked incredibly disappointed in all of us. My brothers and I were left standing there trying to process everything. After that night, Ella and Michael went back to their home, and the family reunion pretty much fell apart. There were still some awkward conversations with the rest of the family, but I felt like everyone was judging me for what I did. I had hoped that by exposing Ella's secret, we could all address the elephant in the room, but instead, I feel like I've completely destroyed any chance of reconciliation between Ella and Michael, and possibly between myself and my family. Since the reunion, Ella hasn't spoken to me. Michael has been distant with the rest of us, and it seems like there's an unspoken divide now. I've received a few messages from family members, some supporting me, and others telling me that I should have kept quiet and let Ella handle things herself. My mom is especially mad at me, claiming I ruined the reunion and caused unnecessary drama. I've been thinking a lot about what I did, and I can't help but feel like maybe I should have kept quiet and let Ella come forward on her own. I know she would have eventually had to confront her actions, but did I have the right to expose her like that in front of the entire family? Should I have taken a more private approach, or was I justified in confronting her publicly? So, am I the a-hole for exposing my sister's secret affair at our family reunion? Am I the a-hole for banning my sister from my wedding after she ruined my engagement party? Okay, so I, 28F, need some serious perspective here, because I'm really questioning whether I handled this situation correctly, but the more I think about it, the more I feel justified. Here's the backstory. I've been with my fiancé, Sam, 30M, for 3 years. We're incredibly happy together, and we've been planning our wedding for about 6 months now. Sam proposed to me in a very intimate, private moment, and it was absolutely perfect. After that, we decided we'd throw an engagement party with our close friends and family to celebrate. I have a sister, Lily, 26F, who's always been a little dramatic. I love her, but she's the kind of person who tends to make everything about herself. She has a history of being a bit of a showstopper in family events, whether it's showing up late and making a scene, or somehow always having to make things about her struggles and challenges. Over the years, it's been hard for me to keep up with her, and while I've tried to support her, it's often felt like she's just waiting for me to do something wrong so she can blow up at me. Anyway, we were getting ready for the engagement party, and I was excited but also a little on edge because of how Lily tends to act when she's in the spotlight. I tried to make sure everything went perfectly, so there wouldn't be any room for drama. The party was being held at a beautiful venue, nothing too extravagant, but it was lovely. It was a small gathering of our closest friends and family, just a chance to celebrate, without all the stress of wedding planning. The night started off well. People were mingling, the drinks were flowing, and Sam and I were just enjoying the moment. That was until Lily showed up. She arrived about 30 minutes late, which wasn't a huge deal, but immediately I could tell. Something was off. She was wearing this very attention-grabbing bright red dress, something way too flashy for an engagement party. She walked in like she was trying to make a grand entrance, and of course, everyone turned to look at her. At first, I thought maybe she was just excited, but as soon as she walked up to me, I could see the look in her eyes, something between annoyance and mischief. She hugged me and whispered, "I don't know why I'm even here. It's not like anyone cares about my feelings anymore." I was taken aback, but I just brushed it off, figuring she was just being dramatic. I said, "Lily, we're so glad you're here. It's not about anyone else but us celebrating tonight." She gave me a tight smile, but I could tell she wasn't happy. Throughout the night, she started dropping little comments like, "Must be nice to have everything go perfectly for you, and some of us don't have it so easy." I tried to ignore it, but the more she talked, the more obvious it became that she was trying to steal the spotlight. It was getting frustrating, but I was determined to enjoy the night and not let her ruin it. Then came the real issue. We had just finished cutting the engagement cake, and Sam and I were sharing a toast with our guests. I was talking to my aunt when I heard someone laughing loudly from across the room. It was Lily. She had made her way to the center of the room where everyone had gathered, and started talking about her latest relationship drama. I'm not exaggerating when I say she made it sound like she was the star of a soap opera. She began going on and on about how her ex-boyfriend had betrayed her, how she couldn't believe she was still single, and how she wasn't sure she even believed in love anymore. She was doing it so loudly that everyone stopped what they were doing to listen, and the worst part, she kept making eye contact with me, almost like she was daring me to say something. I could feel my face getting hot. Everyone could tell what she was doing. She was clearly trying to make the whole night about her, and I was just fed up. Finally, I walked up to her and told her in front of everyone that this wasn't the time or place to air her personal drama. I said, "Lily, we're here to celebrate Sam and I. If you want to have a conversation about your breakup, maybe we can talk about it later, but right now it's about us." So I thought I had handled it well, but Lily completely lost it. She started yelling at me, saying I was selfish and pretentious for thinking that my engagement party was more important than her emotional pain. She accused me of being too wrapped up in my own happiness to care about her, and then she said something that really stung. "You always get what you want. Must be nice to have everything handed to you." I was furious at this point, and I told her that she needed to leave. I didn't want to argue in front of everyone, but the tension was palpable, and I felt like I was just standing there, completely humiliated. So I asked her to leave, and when she refused, I told her that if she didn't leave, I'd have to have someone escort her out. That made her even angrier, but eventually she stormed out of the venue. The rest of the night was awkward. Guests kept asking me what had happened, and I could see that they were uncomfortable. Sam was trying to comfort me, but I could tell he was a little shaken by the way things had turned out. I spent the rest of the night apologizing to people who were confused about what had happened and trying to salvage what was left of the evening. Since then, Lily has been furious with me. She sent me angry texts accusing me of shaming her and ruining her life, and she said she can't believe I would treat her like that, especially at such an important event. I've tried to reach out to apologize for the way I handled things, but I haven't gotten any response. I told her I was hurt by how she acted and that I was just trying to protect the night, but she still insists that I'm the one who was in the wrong. Here's where I'm really torn. Am I the a-hole for kicking my sister out of my engagement party? I feel like she needed to be called out, but maybe I should have handled it privately. Was I too harsh by not letting her stay, or did she go too far in making everything about herself? Am I the a-hole? Am I the a-hole for refusing to let my parents see my daughter after they publicly humiliated me and my husband? Continued. After I snapped at my parents and told them I needed space, I really thought they would cool off and eventually come. Day around. I imagined that they would recognize the hurt they'd caused and apologize, but that's not what happened at all. The silence after that day was deafening. I didn't hear from them at all for nearly a week, which I admit was both a relief and a new kind of agony. Part of me felt like I was finally taking control of my life, but the other part, the part that still loved them, still needed them to understand, kept wondering if I had made the wrong choice. Maybe I overreacted. maybe I could have handled it differently. Could there be a way to salvage our relationship without it feeling so strained and emotionally draining? But then came the text message. It was from my mum. The tone of it was so cold, so calculated. It made me feel like I had been punched in the gut. She didn't apologize or acknowledge her part in what happened at all. Instead, she launched into a tirade about how disappointed she was in me, how ungodly my actions were, and how I was shaming the family by disrespecting their wisdom and experience. She included a long list of everything I had done wrong since Lily's birth, my unconventional choices as a mother, my refusal to listen to them, and my disrespect for family traditions. She said I needed to reflect on what I've done, and that they were praying for me, hoping that God would soften my heart. I was floored. It was a full-on guilt trip that made me feel like the worst person on earth. It made me question everything I'd done, until I took a moment to breathe and remind myself that what I was doing wasn't wrong. I had made choices for my family that were based on research, love, and careful consideration, and I wasn't going to apologize. For that, I showed the text to Luke, who was, as usual, incredibly supportive. He reassured me that my parents were trying to manipulate me into feeling guilty, but he also noticed how hurt I was by their words. He was calm about it, but his anger was palpable. He said they had no right to make me feel like I was destroying the family or abandoning my role as a daughter simply because I wasn't following their outdated views. But then the next bombshell dropped. My dad called. It wasn't even a normal, reasonable call. He immediately launched into a lecture about family honor and how God would never bless a family that didn't honor their elders. He told me that what I was doing was sinful, and that if I didn't apologize and let them see Lily immediately, it would be a disgrace to the entire family. My heart sank. The idea of him involving religion, something I've always been uncomfortable with, especially when used to control others, hit me in a way I wasn't prepared for. I felt trapped, and for a moment, I almost let myself cave. I almost apologized. I almost offered a compromise. Maybe it wouldn't be so bad, right? Maybe I could just let them see Lily, let them get their grandparent fix, and things would go back to normal. But then I remembered how they had disregarded my wishes about the birth, about the way they undermined me every step of the way. I remembered the time I'd been pregnant, trying to make the best decisions for my body and my future child, only to have them criticize me at every turn. I remembered that I couldn't let them back into my life, only for them to continue manipulating and belittling me. So I did something I never thought I would do. I told them that they were not welcome to see Lily until they could respect my boundaries and treat me like an adult. I told them that the guilt they were trying to make me feel was unfair, and that I was no longer willing to be a doormat in their lives. I didn't care how they felt about my decisions anymore because I had a family to protect. What happened next shocked me. My mum replied with another long text, but this time it wasn't just her. She had included my sister, Carrie, 29F, and some extended family members in a group text to keep them updated on what I was doing. The message was an outright character assassination. She painted me as an ungrateful daughter, a rebellious wife, and worst of all, a bad mother, for not allowing them to be involved in Lily's life. She told everyone that I was refusing to let my parents see their grandchild, that I had cut them off, and that Luke had brainwashed me into disrespecting my parents. Carrie, who's always been more on my side than my parents, immediately called me, and I could tell she was trying to calm me down. She said that while my mom's message was extreme, my parents were seriously hurt, and they didn't understand why I was acting like this. She told me that they were doing everything they could to help me, and that my decision to cut them out was making everything worse. But the more she spoke, the more I realized that Carrie, too, had been heavily influenced by my parents' manipulation. I love her, but I don't think she understood just how deeply my parents' control over me had affected me. She suggested I try to compromise, maybe by allowing them to visit, but with certain boundaries, like them only staying for an hour, or meeting at a neutral location. But even that felt like another form of surrender. If I gave them even a little bit, would they respect my boundaries? Would they just twist that into more control? I couldn't go down that path again. I took some time to think it over, and ultimately decided that I wasn't going to compromise on my boundaries anymore. I didn't owe them my peace of mind, and I didn't owe them access to my daughter, not until they could show me respect and genuine understanding. I decided that if they were ever going to see Lily again, it would be on my terms, not theirs. So, here I am, stuck in a position where I've isolated myself from my parents. My sister is caught in the middle, and I'm left wondering if I've made a permanent rift in my family. Am I the a-hole for refusing to let my parents see my daughter after they publicly humiliated me and my husband? Am I the a-hole for refusing to let my parents see my daughter after they publicly humiliated me and my husband? I 32F need some perspective because I'm honestly at a breaking point with my parents, and I'm wondering if I'm overreacting. The situation is complex, and the last few months have been incredibly stressful. but I'm starting to feel like I'm being unfairly vilified. Here's the story. I met my husband, Luke, 34M, when we were in college. We were friends first, and then after a few years we started dating. Our relationship grew incredibly quickly, and before long we were talking about marriage and having kids. We're both very family-oriented people, but we come from very different backgrounds. My parents, both in their early 60s, are traditional, old-fashioned and highly opinionated. They're both retired now and spend most of their time being heavily involved in their church and local community. Luke's family, on the other hand, is much more laid-back and progressive. They're supportive, non-judgmental, and believe in minding their own business, which I honestly appreciate. We got married 3 years ago, and things were fine until I got pregnant last year. My pregnancy was smooth overall, but there were a few complications that required bed rest in the later months. Luke and I were both thrilled to be expecting, and we couldn't wait to start our family together. However, when I told my parents about the pregnancy, they were less than excited. They didn't outright express any negative feelings, but there was a distinct coldness in their reactions. At first I thought it was just nerves or maybe a little anxiety about becoming grandparents, but things took a strange turn when I announced I was planning on having a home birth. I didn't expect them to be thrilled, but I also didn't expect them to react the way they did. My mum flat out told me that I was being irresponsible and selfish for wanting a home birth. She went on a rant about how I was putting myself and my child in danger by not choosing a hospital birth, and how modern medicine was the only safe option. My dad joined in, saying that I should think about the child, and how traditional values meant doing things the proper way. I tried to stay calm, but it was clear that my parents were not on board with the idea. Luke and I had already made the decision that a home birth was what felt right for us. We researched everything thoroughly, hired a licensed midwife, and had a backup plan in case we needed to go to a hospital. I explained all of this to my parents, but it didn't seem to matter to them. They were determined to make me see things their way. The tension grew worse when they insisted on attending the birth. I told them that while I loved them, I wanted my birth to be as calm and private as possible, and I didn't want anyone other than Luke and the midwife there. My parents were furious. They insisted that they were the grandparents and had every right to be present at the birth of their grandchild. It wasn't just about being there, though. It was about the control they wanted over the situation. They wanted to dictate the environment, make decisions, and even demanded to be in the EE room during labor. This felt like a major violation of my boundaries. I stuck to my guns, and in the end, they respected my wishes to not be in the room. But when I gave birth to our beautiful daughter, Lily, they didn't take the news well at all. When we introduced them to her, their comments were less than supportive. My mom immediately started criticizing my decision to breastfeed exclusively, saying it was unnatural and outdated. My dad didn't say much, but he gave me the cold shoulder the entire visit. It didn't stop there. Over the next few months, my parents would send passive-aggressive texts about how I was raising Lily. They didn't like the way I was parenting her, even though I was doing everything I felt was best. They criticized our choice to delay certain vaccines, which was something I researched thoroughly and felt comfortable with. They questioned my decision to co-sleep with Lily, even though it was an arrangement that worked well for us. But the biggest issue came when they began to make comments about my marriage to Luke. They started insinuating that Luke wasn't doing enough to protect me, and that I should be more careful about letting him off the hook when it came to household responsibilities. This comment came after I had just been through a particularly rough week of sleepless nights with a newborn, and Luke had been incredibly supportive. He took over the cooking, cleaning, and night shifts with the baby. He's been an amazing partner, and I felt hurt that my parents couldn't see that. One day, things reached a boiling point. We had invited my parents over for a casual lunch with Lily, thinking it would be a nice family gathering. During the visit, my mum made a snide comment about how Luke wasn't doing a good enough job of helping me with Lily, and my dad chimed in with, "You know, if you ever need help, we could always take Lily for a while so you two could get your act together." I was completely stunned. My parents had no right to comment on how Luke and I were handling our responsibilities as parents, and the suggestion that they take Lily away from us was completely out of line. I finally snapped. I told them that their behavior was unacceptable, and I didn't want them interfering in my life or my marriage anymore. I told them that they had no respect for my boundaries or the choices Luke and I were making as parents. I also told them that their constant criticism and undermining were damaging our relationship. My mom started crying, saying that I was being unfair and that she was just trying to be a good grandmother. My dad was silent, but the disappointment in his eyes was clear. They left shortly afterward, and I haven't heard from them in 2 weeks. I feel absolutely drained by this whole situation. I love my parents, but I feel like they've crossed too many lines at this point. I don't want them in Lily's life if they're going to continue to disrespect me and my decisions. I don't know how to move forward. I've talked to Luke about it, and he supports me in whatever decision I make, but I feel guilty. It's hard to cut ties with your parents, but at the same time, I don't want them poisoning my relationship with Luke or Lily. So, am I the a-hole for refusing to let my parents see my daughter after they publicly humiliated me and my husband? Am I the a-hole for banning my best friend from my wedding because of her behavior? I'm going to try to keep this as concise as possible, but it's a bit of a mess, so bear with me. I, 28F, have been best friends with Jenna, 29F, for over 15 years. We've been through everything together. High school, college, bad relationships, good ones, family drama, the whole shebang. She's honestly like a sister to me, and we've always been there for each other. I would have never imagined a situation where I would have to consider cutting her out of my life, let alone banning her from my wedding. Here's where the issue starts. I recently got engaged to my fiancé, Adam, 31M. We're both really excited, and everything has been falling into place. We've been planning the wedding for about 6 months now, and we decided to go for a classic, elegant ceremony at a beautiful venue. It's going to be small, just our close friends and family, and we're keeping things simple but elegant. I was over the moon when Adam proposed, and everything about our relationship feels right. I wanted everything about the wedding to be perfect, including the people I chose to have by my side. I've been taking wedding planning seriously and have been doing a lot of research and making decisions carefully. As part of this, I've been thinking about the bridal party. I didn't hesitate to ask Jenna to be my maid of honor. I love her and she's been my best friend for so long. It felt like the obvious choice. However, things started to go downhill when it came time to make decisions about the wedding itself. The first red flag was when I asked Jenna to help me pick out dresses. She completely disregarded my preferences and started pushing her own agenda. Even when I told her I wanted something a little more understated, she insisted I needed something flashier, and even tried to convince me to go for a dress she thought was more fun and sexy, but it wasn't what I envisioned. I let it slide at first because I didn't want to cause tension, but it was clear that we were clashing over the details. Then came the issue with the guest list. I had a very specific vision for who I wanted at the wedding, and I made it clear, to all of my bridesmaids, including Jenna, that I didn't want anyone to add extra guests without clearing it with me first. This is important because our venue has a strict capacity limit, and I didn't want to end up overbooked. A few weeks ago, I found out that Jenna had gone behind my back and invited one of her old friends, who I've met only once and don't particularly get along with, to the wedding. She didn't even ask me about it. When I confronted her about it, she seemed totally unfazed. She said she didn't see the big deal and that she just assumed I would be fine with it because it's just one extra person. I tried to explain that the guest list was carefully curated and I couldn't just add someone without thinking about the space, costs, or the vibe of the event. She brushed it off like it was no big deal, but it left me feeling frustrated and disrespected. Things only got worse from there. Jenna started taking over aspects of the wedding that weren't her responsibility. She insisted on handling some of the decor and even made decisions about my bridal shower without asking me for input. I've always been a fairly independent person, so this felt like a huge violation of my boundaries. I had made it clear to her several times that I wanted to be in control of these decisions, and I wanted to make sure everything reflected my and Adam's personalities, not just what she thought was fun or cute. I tried to talk to her about it calmly, but she got defensive. She told me I was being controlling and too picky about everything. She said I should just relax and let her take charge because I was stressing out over nothing. It was like she completely ignored my feelings and the fact that I was putting in a lot of effort to make this day something special for me and Adam. A week ago, she went even further when she started talking about her own wedding plans. She's not even engaged yet, by the way. She said she would be taking notes from my wedding so she could have her own dream wedding someday, and that my wedding would be a great rehearsal for her. I was horrified. It was like she didn't even care about the significance of my day, and was just treating it as practice for her own event. I told her that wasn't appropriate, and that I felt like she wasn't respecting the fact that this was my day, not hers. At this point, I realized something had to change. I wasn't comfortable with the way things were going, and I didn't want someone in my bridal party who was undermining my decisions and making everything about herself. I talked to Adam about it, and after some difficult conversations, I made the decision to ask Jenna to step down as my maid of honor. I told her that I still wanted her to be at the wedding, but I needed some space from her while I continued to plan. She was furious. Jenna took it worse than I thought she would. She accused me of throwing away our friendship and said I was throwing her under the bus because she cared so much about my wedding. She said I was being dramatic and selfish and that I was overreacting to everything. She even went as far as to say that she wasn't going to come to the wedding at all if she wasn't going to be in the bridal party. It's been over a week, and we haven't really spoken since then. I've had people tell me that I made the right choice, but I can't help but feel guilty. Jenna's been a huge part of my life, and this whole situation has been heartbreaking. But at the same time, I feel like I'm being forced to choose between my wedding and someone who's not respecting my boundaries. So, am I the a-hole for banning my best friend from my wedding because of her behavior? Am I the a-hole for not allowing my cousin to bring her emotional support animal to my wedding? I'm in a bit of a dilemma, and I need some advice from people who might be able to give me a more objective perspective. I'm getting married in a few months, and while the planning has been mostly smooth, there's one major issue that has come up that's really stressing me out. I, 29F, have been planning my wedding to my fiancé, Chris, 30M, for over a year. Now, we've both always dreamed of having a beautiful and somewhat traditional wedding, nothing too extravagant, but a big celebration with our close family and friends. We've got the venue sorted, the catering set, and everything else is coming together, but there's one detail that's been causing a rift in the family. My cousin, Grace, 32F, and her emotional support dog, Max. I've known Grace my whole life and we're pretty close, but our relationship has had its ups and downs over the years. She's always been someone who can be a bit dramatic, to put it lightly. She tends to make everything about her, and she's often been a bit of a troublemaker at family events, like always being late, being overly emotional, and making scenes. Despite that, I always try to be supportive of her, especially since I know she has a history of mental health struggles. Grace has an emotional support dog, Max, who she claims is essential for her mental well-being. I don't doubt that Grace faces challenges. She's had a rough time with anxiety and depression, and she's open about how Max helps her cope. She's even talked to me about how attached she is to him and how she'd feel completely lost without him. I totally respect that she's dealing with real mental health issues, but here's where the problem lies. Grace told me early on in the wedding planning that she would be bringing Max to the wedding. She said that she couldn't imagine being at such a big event without him, as he helps her manage her anxiety, especially in social situations. At first I didn't think much of it and was just like, okay, no problem. But as I started thinking about the logistics of it, I began to feel uneasy. For one, the wedding venue we've chosen isn't really set up for dogs. It's a historic building with a lot of intricate decor, and the ceremony and reception will be taking place in areas where pets would not be allowed normally. I also realized that not everyone is comfortable around dogs. Some guests have allergies, and others simply aren't dog people. I also started imagining what might happen if Max, who is still relatively young and can be a bit excitable, caused a scene during the ceremony or reception. I didn't want my wedding day to be filled with distractions or potential chaos. So I talked to Chris about it, and we both agreed that we didn't want any pets at the wedding, aside from a couple of pre-approved service dogs. We didn't want anyone's anxiety or potential allergy issues to disrupt the day. We also thought about our other guests, many of whom might feel uncomfortable with a dog running around, especially since it's going to be a formal event. Didn't know how to approach Grace with this, but I decided to have an honest conversation with her. I told her that while I understood how important Max is to her, we've decided to have a no-pet policy for the wedding, except for service animals. I explained that the venue wasn't really equipped for dogs, and that I didn't want to make anyone uncomfortable, especially with allergies and other concerns. Grace didn't take it well. She immediately became defensive and started insisting that she needed Max there for emotional support. She said that without him, she wouldn't be able to enjoy the wedding and might even have a panic attack. I tried to empathize with her, but I also stuck to my decision, explaining that it wasn't about her personally, it was about the logistics of the event and the comfort of all the guests. I also reassured her that I wanted her to be there and that her presence meant a lot to me, but that the dog would have to stay home. The conversation got pretty heated, and Grace told me that I was being insensitive and selfish for not considering her needs. She said that if I didn't let Max come, she wouldn't be able to come either. I was shocked, and honestly it hurt. I hadn't expected her to react like that, especially not when I was trying to be as understanding as possible. I told Grace that I would be devastated if she didn't attend, but I couldn't change the policy. I didn't want my wedding to be overshadowed by tension or drama, but I also felt like I had to draw the line somewhere. She left the conversation saying that she'd think about it, but since then she's barely spoken to me. I've received a few passive-aggressive texts and seen some passive-aggressive posts on social media, and it's making me feel guilty and conflicted. Now, I'm really wondering if I overreacted. I know that her emotional support animal is a big part of her life, but I can't help but feel like my wedding day should be about my choices and the comfort of everyone involved. I'm not asking her to change her mental health situation or to stop using Max as her emotional support animal, but I also don't feel like I should have to sacrifice the experience I want for the sake of one person's comfort. So, am I the a-hole for not allowing my cousin to bring her emotional support animal to my wedding? Am I the a-hole for not letting my sister's kids be in my wedding after they ruined my last one? I'm honestly torn right now and could really use some outside perspective. Here's the situation. I, 30F, am getting married to my fiancé, Daniel, 32M, in a couple of months. It's going to be a small, intimate ceremony with close family and friends, and I'm so excited about it. However, There's one issue that has caused a lot of tension within my family, and I'm not sure if I'm being too harsh. I have a sister, Emily, 34F, who has 3 kids, ages 9, 7 and 5. I love my niece and nephews, and I've been very involved in their lives since they were born. But Emily and her kids have caused some issues in the past, and I've always been a little bit frustrated with how she handles things. To give you some context, I got married 5 years ago to my ex-husband, and during that wedding, Emily's kids completely ruined things. They were incredibly misbehaved, running around the venue screaming, throwing tantrums, and just generally acting out the whole time. I tried to be understanding since they were young, but it was chaotic, and it really set the tone for the entire wedding. The ceremony was nearly ruined because my niece got upset and started crying during our vows, and my nephews were running up and down the aisles. It was incredibly stressful, and my ex and I were both extremely frustrated. I'm not blaming the kids entirely, though. Emily, as the parent, did very little to manage the situation. She was more focused on socializing with other guests and enjoying the event than actually keeping her kids under control. At one point, she left the reception early because the kids were acting out, and it left a bad taste in my mouth, to say the least. Fast forward to my upcoming wedding. I've been very clear with Emily that while I adore her kids, I want a calm, peaceful wedding this time. I don't want any disruptions or chaos, especially after the disaster of the last one. I told her that I didn't want any children in the bridal party or involved in the ceremony in any capacity, simply because of how things went the last time. I also mentioned that I didn't want them running around during the ceremony or reception, and that I wanted a more adult-only atmosphere to keep everything calm. She was not happy about it. She said that I was being unfair and that my niece and nephews deserved to be a part of my wedding, considering how close they are to me. She said that I was punishing them for something they didn't fully understand, and that it wasn't their fault the wedding was chaotic 5 years ago. She also said that it hurt her feelings that I wasn't allowing her kids to be part of such an important day. I tried to explain that it wasn't about them personally, but more about the fact that I want my wedding day to be relaxed and enjoyable for everyone, including myself. I told her that I didn't want to risk the same chaos happening again, and I didn't feel like it was unreasonable to ask for an adult-only wedding. I also told her that I didn't want her kids in the bridal party, as I felt they were too young for the responsibility, and frankly, I just didn't want to risk any more stress. Emily has been angry with me ever since. She said I was being selfish and rude, and that I was making her kids feel excluded. She also said that I was punishing them for things that were beyond their control, and that I was treating them unfairly because they were just kids. She said that I was causing a rift in our relationship, and that it would make her seriously reconsider attending my wedding. I feel awful, but I also feel like I have every right to make the wedding day exactly what I want. I don't think I'm being unreasonable to ask that Emily's kids not be part of the ceremony or reception, especially given how things went the last time. But at the same time, I don't want to hurt my sister's feelings or cause unnecessary drama. Now I'm stuck. Am I the a-hole for not allowing my sister's kids to be in my wedding after they ruined my last one? Am I the a-hole for calling out my friend's husband for making rude comments about my weight at my wedding? This is one of those situations where I'm really questioning myself, and I can't figure out if I was being too sensitive or if I had every right to be upset. Here's what happened. 28F. Got married to my fiancé, Mark, 30mm, last weekend. Our wedding was something we'd been dreaming of for a long time. Small, intimate, with close friends and family, and we were both so excited. It was a beautiful day and everything was going smoothly, until one of my best friends, Jenna, 29F, brought her husband Luke, 32M, along. Now I've known Jenna for years, and we've been incredibly close. I've always been there for her and she's been there for me, so naturally, I was thrilled to have her at my wedding, but her husband, Luke, has always rubbed me the wrong way. He's a little blunt, for lack of a better word. He's not the most socially aware guy, and he has a tendency to make comments that make people uncomfortable. I've never said anything about it because I don't want to cause drama, and Jenna has always defended him, saying that he's just not good with words. The wedding itself was going off without a hitch. We had a beautiful ceremony, and the reception was filled with dancing, laughter, and love. But things started to go south during the reception dinner. Luke was sitting at our table with Jenna, and I noticed he was looking me up and down a lot. It made me a bit uncomfortable, but I brushed it off, figuring I was overthinking things. That was until dessert. As we were all finishing up, Luke turned to me and said, "Wow, I didn't realize how much weight you'd put on since the last time I saw you. You were a lot smaller in college." He said it loud enough for everyone at the table to hear. I was stunned. I could feel my face flush, and I didn't know how to respond at first. Luke has always made offhand comments about people's appearances before, but I guess I didn't expect him to be so blunt at my wedding, especially about something so personal. Everyone else at the table went quiet, and I could see Jenna looking uncomfortable too. For a second I thought about just letting it go, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized how much it hurt me. I had worked so hard to feel confident about my body and my appearance, and this wasn't just some random comment. It felt like a jab at something I've struggled with for years. My weight has been a sensitive subject for me for a long time, and I've worked hard to get to a place where I'm not constantly thinking about it. But hearing him say something like that on one of the happiest days of my life felt like a punch to the gut. So I called him out. I looked at him and said, "Luke, that's a really rude thing to say. This is my wedding day, and I don't appreciate you making comments about my body. I would never comment on your appearance like that, so please don't make comments on mine." He seemed a bit taken aback, but instead of apologizing, he just shrugged and muttered something like, "I didn't mean anything by it." Jenna immediately tried to defuse the situation, saying something like, "Luke doesn't always know how to talk, sorry." But I wasn't having it. I turned to Jenna and said, "I'm really disappointed that you're not standing up for me right now." That was completely out of line. The rest of the evening was a bit awkward after that. Jenna and Luke didn't really interact with me much after that moment, and I could feel the tension in the air. Mark, my husband, didn't say anything during the incident. But after the wedding, he told me that he thought Luke was way out of line, but that I probably should have kept it to myself for the sake of the evening. Since then, I've had a lot of mixed feelings. Jenna reached out to apologize, but it felt more like a sorry you got offended apology, and she didn't really seem to understand why what Luke said was so hurtful. Luke has yet to acknowledge what he did, and I'm starting to feel like maybe I made too big of a deal out of it. After all, it's just weight, right? I've gained some weight over the years, and I know it's noticeable, so maybe I overreacted by calling him out like that in front of everyone. But at the same time, I feel like that was a moment where I had the right to stand up for myself. I didn't want to let his comments slide, because they weren't just about my weight. They were about my self-worth, especially on a day where I was supposed to feel celebrated, not diminished. So here I am, wondering, am I the a-hole for calling out my friend's husband for making rude comments about my weight at my wedding? Am I the a-hole for not allowing my sister to bring her kids to my wedding after she made me feel guilty for not inviting them? I need some perspective on this situation because I've been going back and forth about whether I'm the one in the wrong, and it's causing a lot of tension in my family. This is one of those situations where no matter what I do, someone is going to be upset, and I don't know if I'm making the right choice. So, a little background. I, 31F, am getting married to my fiancé, Luke, 33M, in a few months. We've been together for 5 years, and we're both super excited to finally tie the knot. We've spent a lot of time planning this wedding, and it's going to be a small intimate ceremony with about 80 people, just close family and friends. It's not a huge affair, and we're trying to keep it as stress-free and low-key as possible. It's also taking place in a venue that doesn't have a ton of space for children, and we've decided to have a no-kids policy for the wedding, excluding a few exceptions, like my young niece, who's part of the wedding party. Now, my sister, Claire 36F, is one of my closest family members, and I love her kids, ages 6, 4, and 2. But I've always been clear about my stance on kids at weddings. My own personal preference is that I didn't want to have children at mine. Luke and I both agreed on it, and we're firm on the no-kids rule for the ceremony and reception. I get that some people might disagree with that decision, but it's my wedding, and I feel that we should be able to choose what works for us. Here's where the problem starts. Claire, being my sister, is obviously invited to the wedding. She's always been supportive of me, but she's also very protective of her kids, and she has a habit of pushing boundaries when it comes to her family. When I sent out the invitations, I made it very clear that I was sticking to my no-kids policy, and I even addressed it politely with her, giving her plenty of heads-up time. Claire was not happy about it. In fact, she was furious. She called me up and told me that she was really disappointed that I wasn't inviting her kids. She said it was unfair to exclude them, especially when I knew how much they loved me and how much they wanted to be a part of my big day. She also said that she couldn't find anyone to look after them, and it wasn't feasible for her to leave them at home or with a sitter. I was sympathetic to her situation, but I reiterated that I had made the decision with Luke and that we weren't making exceptions. She didn't take that well. Claire tried to guilt-trip me by saying that if I didn't allow her kids to come, it would be the first time in years that we wouldn't be able to share a special family moment together. She made me feel guilty for not considering how much it meant for her to be there with her kids, especially since they had always been close to me. I explained that I understood her feelings, but this was a decision I'd made after a lot of thought. I told her that while I love her kids, I didn't feel it was the right environment for young children, and I didn't want the day to be disrupted by potential meltdowns, tantrums, or stress. I also mentioned that we had a limited guest list, and there were other logistical reasons for not having kids around, but Claire wasn't backing down. She told me that I was being selfish and that it was just one day. She said that my wedding was going to be about me and Luke, but I should think about what family means and how important it was for her kids to witness this moment. She suggested I find a way to make it work, and said that if I didn't change my mind, she might not be able to attend the wedding at all. I was taken aback by that. I never imagined that my decision about children at the wedding would lead to a situation where she might not even come. It felt like she was putting me in an impossible position. I didn't want her to feel like I was excluding her, but I also didn't want to compromise on my wedding plans. I'm not someone who enjoys confrontation, but this felt like a big deal to me. In the end, I stuck to my guns and told her that the no kids rule was final. I explained that I wasn't going to change the guest list, and if she felt she couldn't attend because of it, I would understand. But I couldn't bend on this one. She was furious and hung up on me, and after that, things got even worse. Over the past few weeks, Claire has been sending me passive-aggressive messages. She's made snide remarks about my selfishness on social media, and her husband, my brother-in-law, has gotten involved too, saying that it's ridiculous for me to not include her kids. It's created a lot of tension in the family, and now everyone's talking behind my back. My parents are trying to stay neutral, but I can tell they're disappointed in my decision too. Now I'm left wondering if I made the right call. I don't want to ruin my relationship with Claire, but at the same time, this is my wedding, and I want to be comfortable on my special day. I don't feel like I should have to justify my decision over and over again just to make someone else happy. So am I the a-hole for not allowing my sister to bring her kids to my wedding after she made me feel guilty for not inviting them? Am I the a-hole for refusing to pay for my sister's wedding after she disinvited me and accused me of ruining her life? I honestly don't know what to think anymore. I've been going back and forth on this, trying to figure out if I'm being the unreasonable one, but it feels like everything just keeps spiraling, and now I'm wondering if I'm the one in the wrong. Let me start from the beginning. I, 30mm, have a sister, Sarah, 28F, who's getting married in a few months. She's always been the golden child of the family, and while we've had our ups and downs over the years, I've never really had a bad relationship with her. We've been close enough, and I always thought we had each other's backs, but things took a major turn when she started planning her wedding. First of all, I've always been there for Sarah. I've helped her financially at times when she was struggling, supported her decisions, and been her emotional rock through difficult times. I never once expected anything in return. But when it came to her wedding, that's when things started to shift. Sarah and her fiancé, Jake, 32M, are both pretty successful financially. They have a decent savings and the means to pay for most of the wedding themselves. I have a decent job too, but I'm not as well off as they are. Still, I agreed to help out with some of the expenses because I know weddings are expensive and I wanted to be supportive. I offered to help with the venue deposit and some of the other costs that would ease their financial burden, but the moment I mentioned it, everything started to go downhill. She looked at me like I was crazy. She told me she didn't need my help and that she was capable of paying for everything herself. I thought that was fine, no big deal. I wasn't going to push it. But a few weeks later, Sarah came to me and said she was having trouble with the guest list. She had a limited number of spots due to venue restrictions, and she asked me if I would be willing to step aside and not attend the wedding to make room for some of her other friends. She said I could still be part of the planning process, just not as a guest at the ceremony. I was taken aback. I had never imagined being told I wouldn't be invited to my sister's wedding, but I tried to keep my cool. I asked her why I was being excluded, and she said it was because I wasn't contributing enough to the wedding, and that it would be better if I stayed out of the way. I told her I had offered to help financially, and she dismissed it, saying, "Money isn't everything." I was hurt, but I agreed to step back from the guest list. I didn't want to make things harder for her, especially with her wedding only a few months away. But this is where everything went completely off the rails. After I accepted her decision, things started escalating. Sarah began making subtle and not so subtle remarks about me. She'd say things like, "Maybe if you actually cared about this wedding you would be doing more," or "I just wish you were more involved." It was clear that her guilt was manifesting in a way that made me feel like I was the problem. Then the bombshell dropped. Sarah called me one night and told me that she and Jake had decided to elope. Apparently they had been planning to do this for a while, but they just hadn't told anyone yet. I felt a sense of relief. She wouldn't be pushing me out of a wedding I didn't want to be a part of, right? But that wasn't the end of it. A few days later, I got a text from her that completely blindsided me. She told me she was canceling the entire wedding and didn't want me to be involved in any way because I had ruined her life. I couldn't wrap my head around it. I hadn't done anything to sabotage her wedding. All I did was offer to help and try to be a supportive brother, but now she was making me out to be the villain. I called her immediately, trying to understand what was going on. She told me that I was too toxic for her wedding, and that everything I had done, offering to help, not respecting her boundaries with the guest list, was making things worse. She accused me of trying to manipulate her into letting me help and that I had made her feel guilty and trapped. I was completely stunned. I had always tried to be there for her, but this accusation was something I couldn't even fathom. After that call, things got worse. Sarah posted on social media about how I had ruined her happiness and was the source of all her stress. She wrote about how family dynamics were complicated and how she couldn't deal with me anymore. Friends and family members started texting me, asking what had happened. Some were supportive of me, others sided with her. I started getting texts from people I hadn't heard from in years, telling me I needed to make things right, or I would lose my relationship with Sarah for good. But here's the kicker. I had already been planning on paying for a portion of her wedding costs, something I'd been saving up for, even though she insisted she didn't need the money. Now, with her cancelling everything and calling me toxic, I felt like I had been completely dismissed and disrespected. I didn't feel like I owed her anything anymore. She had made it clear that my presence wasn't wanted and that I was a burden on her happiness, so I made a decision. I contacted her and told her that I would no longer be contributing any money to the wedding, especially after the way she had treated me. I told her that if she wasn't going to treat me like family, then I wasn't going to treat her like someone who deserved my support. She was furious. She sent me an angry message saying I was selfish and that I was punishing her, just because things didn't go the way I wanted. She said that I had no right to pull out of helping after everything that had happened. And now, here, I am wondering if I made the right decision. I tried to help, I respected her wishes, and I never intended for any of this to happen. But now she's blaming me for everything, and it's making me question if I should have just swallowed my pride and paid up. So am I the a-hole for refusing to pay for my sister's wedding after she disinvited me and accused me of ruining her life? Am I the a-hole for ending my relationship with my mother after she sabotaged my wedding to try to control my life? I'm still reeling from everything that happened, and I can't help but feel like I've lost everything. My relationship with my mother, my wedding, my family, and my peace of mind. And I'm torn because I genuinely don't know if I'm in the wrong for cutting her off, or if I should have just sucked it up for the sake of family peace. Let me give you some context. I, 27F, got engaged to my fiancé, Mark, 30M, about a year ago. We've been together for 4 years, and we've always had a strong, healthy relationship. We're both on the same page about what we want in life, and we were both extremely excited to start planning our wedding. Mark and I had always agreed that we wanted a small, intimate ceremony, something meaningful with just close friends and family. It wasn't about grand gestures or flashy displays. We wanted it to be about the love we share and the commitment we were making to each other. I thought the wedding planning process would be smooth, but as soon as my mother, Linda, 50s, got involved, it turned into a nightmare. I love my mom, but she has always been the type of person who wants to control everything. It's always been about her way, and no matter how much I love her, I've always felt like I've had to live my life according to her rules. At first I thought it was just excitement, maybe even some nerves on her part. She's always dreamed of being part of a big, lavish wedding, and I thought that would be the extent of it. But no, it didn't stop there. My mom started pushing for a massive wedding. Not the small, intimate one that Mark and I had discussed. No, she wanted a ballroom, an extravagant guest list, a 300-plus person event. She began sending me ideas for extravagant venues, wedding planners, florists. Everything was over the top. When I tried to tell her we wanted something smaller and more personal, she would shut me down and insist that I was being selfish, that I didn't understand the importance of having a wedding worthy of our love. The real problem began when she started inviting people without asking me. My mom, who already has a tendency to overstep, started inviting distant relatives and family friends without checking with me or Mark. I found out when I was looking at the guest list one night, and it was filled with people I barely knew, some of whom I had not seen in years. When I confronted her about it, she claimed that I was being too picky and that she was just trying to make sure our wedding was beautiful and memorable. She said that it was important for our wedding to be a big deal because everyone would expect it. She even went as far as to say, if you don't invite them, people will talk. I thought I was being clear about wanting to take control of the guest list, but my mom ignored it. The tipping point came when I saw she had emailed the venue to reserve a date and had already put down a deposit without consulting me. I was furious. I had no idea that she had gone ahead and made these decisions. When I called her out on it, she said, I just wanted to help make things easier for you, honey. You're too busy with work to handle all the details. But she wasn't helping me. She was bulldozing me and taking control of something that was supposed to be mine, and Mark's Day, I finally reached a breaking point. I sat down with my mom and told her that I couldn't move forward with the wedding if she was going to keep taking control. I told her that I felt like she was trying to hijack my big day, and it was affecting my relationship with her. I said that I wanted our wedding to reflect us, not her vision of what it should be. And this is where things really went south. Instead of listening to me, she broke down in tears and told me that I was being ungrateful. She said that everything she had done was because she loved me and wanted me to have a proper wedding. She accused me of being a bad daughter, saying that I was rejecting her and trying to shut her out of something that was supposed to be a celebration of family. Things escalated even further when she made a huge scene in front of the rest of the family. At a family dinner, she told everyone that I was being difficult, selfish and unappreciative of all the things she was doing for me. She said I was ruining my wedding and alienating the people who love me the most. My relatives started chiming in, some agreeing with her, others telling me to just let her do what she wants since it's a once-in-a-lifetime event. I felt humiliated, overwhelmed, and utterly betrayed by the person I thought would support me the most. This was the final straw for me. I told her that I couldn't do this anymore and that I needed space from her. I explained that I couldn't continue with the wedding plans if she wasn't willing to respect my wishes. I needed her to understand that my wedding wasn't a show or a spectacle for her. It was about Mark and me and our relationship. After that, we didn't speak for several weeks. My mom reached out once or twice, but I didn't respond. I had to take time to process everything. Eventually, she called and left a voicemail saying she was heartbroken and that she didn't understand why I was shutting her out. She told me she was just trying to be involved in my life and that I was pushing her away. I felt terrible, but at the same time I knew I had made the right decision. I was being crushed under the weight of her expectations, and I didn't want to start my marriage feeling like I was constantly battling to please her. Mark and I ended up going ahead with the wedding we wanted, a small ceremony with close family and friends, and it was perfect. But my mom didn't attend. She hasn't spoken to me since, and the rest of the family is divided. Some think I did the right thing in standing up for myself, but others say I should have just let it go and let her have her way. I'm still unsure whether I'm being too harsh. I'm not asking her to be completely hands-off, but she's taken over my life for so long that it felt like I was losing my identity. So, am I the a-hole for ending my relationship with my mother over what she did to my wedding, or was I justified in cutting her off? Am I the a-hole for exposing my sister's affair to her husband after she begged me to keep quiet? This situation is something I still can't stop thinking about. It's a mess of emotions, regret, and broken relationships, and I don't know where I stand anymore. I really need to know if I'm the one in the wrong here, or if I made the right call. So here's the story. I, 29F, have an older sister, Natalie, 33F. We've always had a pretty good relationship, but there's always been a little bit of a distance between us. She's the golden child in the family, successful, always in control, and seemingly perfect. I've never resented her for it, but sometimes it felt like she lived in a world where everything was handed to her on a silver platter. Natalie is married to Ben, 35M, a good guy. He's caring, reliable, and treats her like a queen. He adores their 2 kids, and everyone always thought they were the perfect family. They've been married for 8 years, and from the outside, everything was just fine. The trouble began when I learned that Natalie had been having an affair. It started innocently enough, or at least that's how she made it seem. It wasn't like she came to me and confessed immediately. She didn't have a guilty conscience about it at first. But one day she was over at my place and accidentally left her phone on my kitchen counter. I wasn't snooping. I wasn't even intending to look at it. But it buzzed, and the name that flashed on the screen was someone I didn't recognize. I glanced down and saw a message pop up that made my heart stop. It was a text from a man, something along the lines of, "I can't wait to see you again tonight. I miss you so much." I was stunned. I immediately put the phone down and tried to shake it off, but the seed of doubt was planted. The next time I saw Natalie, I could barely make eye contact with her. I kept wondering if I had seen something that wasn't what it seemed. But deep down, I knew. I knew that something was off. A week later, she came to me in tears. She told me everything. She'd been having an affair for the past 6 months with a guy she met at work. It was someone who made her feel alive again, someone who gave her the attention and excitement that had been lacking in her marriage. She said it was a mistake, that she loved Ben and their family, but this affair had become an emotional crutch for her. She said she was planning to end things with the other guy soon, but here's the kicker. She begged me not to tell Ben. She asked me to keep it a secret. She swore that if I did, she would fix things with Ben herself. She promised me she would tell him eventually, but only after she was certain she could move forward and leave the affair behind. I was shocked. I was hurt, but I also understood the pain she must have been feeling. I could see how lost she was in the situation. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized how messed up it was that she was asking me to hide such a huge betrayal from her husband. Ben deserved to know the truth, didn't he? He had the right to decide if he wanted to stay in a marriage with a woman who had lied to him, who had been unfaithful. The more I thought about it, the more I felt like I couldn't live with the weight of the secret. It wasn't my place to protect her from the consequences of her actions, and even though I loved her and didn't want to see her marriage fall apart, I couldn't stand the thought of Ben continuing to trust her when she was hiding something this big. I took a day to process everything, but in the end I made the decision to tell Ben. I knew it was going to shatter his world, but I thought he deserved the truth. So I called him. He was completely blindsided. I told him that Natalie had been having an affair for the past 6 months and that she had confided in me about it. I didn't give him all the details, but I told him enough so he could understand the situation. His reaction was exactly what I expected. He was crushed. He kept asking me why I hadn't told him sooner, why I hadn't tried to stop it from happening in the first place, but I couldn't change what I had done. I just explained that I thought he deserved to know the truth and that I had to tell him, even though it was the hardest thing I've ever done. The fallout from this has been awful. Natalie is furious with me. She hasn't spoken to me in weeks, and when we did speak, she told me that I had ruined her life. She said I had betrayed her trust and that I was wrong to go behind her back like that. She kept telling me that this was her mistake to fix, not mine. But even worse, Ben doesn't know how to feel about me. He thanked me for telling him, but it's clear he's hurt and confused. He's now in the process of deciding what to do with their marriage, but I know things will never be the same. I feel like I've caused irreparable damage to their relationship, and to my relationship with my sister. I didn't want this to happen, but I couldn't live with the lie, and I couldn't keep protecting her from the consequences of what she'd done. Now, the rest of our family is caught in the middle. Some of them agree with my decision and think I did the right thing by telling Ben, while others say I should have kept quiet. They say that this wasn't my business, that I shouldn't have interfered, and that I've made things so much worse. So here I am, stuck in the middle of this nightmare, wondering if I really am the a-hole. Am I the a-hole for exposing my sister's affair to her husband, even though she begged me to keep quiet? Should I have stayed silent and let her handle it herself, or did I do the right thing by telling him? I really need to know. Am I the a-hole for refusing to forgive my best friend after learning she slept with my husband and told me she was just helping him feel better? It's still hard to wrap my mind around everything that's happened in the past few months. What started as a normal friendship, with everything that was supposed to be sacred, has completely unraveled. And now, I'm left wondering if I'm the one who's overreacting. I need an outside perspective on whether I'm being the a-hole, or if I'm just standing up for myself and my marriage. Let me start from the beginning. I, Sarah, have been married to my husband, Adam, for 6 years. We've always had a solid relationship, or at least I thought we did. No major issues, no big blow-ups. Just a few typical disagreements here and there, but nothing that could ever feel like it was unmanageable. Now my best friend, Emily, and I have been close for even longer. We met in high school, and since then, we've been through everything together. She's the kind of person who would drop everything for you, the kind of friend who truly makes you feel like you're the most important person in the room. She's the one I confide in when things are rough with Adam, and I never once questioned her loyalty or intentions, but that all changed when I found out that she and Adam had slept together. I'll never forget that day. I was at work, and everything seemed fine, until my phone buzzed with a text from Emily. The message said, "We need to talk. I've been carrying around something for a while, and I can't keep it in anymore." My heart immediately dropped. I felt an overwhelming sense of dread, like something was off. The tone of the message was strange, almost urgent, so I called her. She answered after one ring, and her voice was shaky, like she was about to cry. I asked her what was going on, and she hesitated for a long time. I could feel the tension through the phone, but I had no idea what she was about to drop on me. "I need to tell you something about Adam," she finally said. In that moment, a sickening knot formed in my stomach. I pressed her, demanding to know what was going on. That's when she told me that a few months ago Adam had confided in her about feeling distant from me, about feeling like our marriage was lacking in passion, and that he felt disconnected from me emotionally. I was shocked, but I wasn't prepared for what she said next. He came to me for help, and I ended up sleeping with him. I froze. I thought I was going to pass out. The air seemed to leave my lungs as her words hit me like a ton of bricks. She quickly tried to explain that it wasn't planned, that it wasn't something they had set out to do, and that she felt like it was just an emotional moment where she was trying to comfort him. She kept saying things like, "I wasn't trying to betray you, and it just happened, and I'm so sorry. I never meant for it to go this far." I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. But instead, I was just numb. All I could think was, how could she do this? How could she betray me like this? She was supposed to be my best friend. She was supposed to be the person who had my back, not the one who tore my world apart. I demanded that she tell me everything. How long had it been going on? How often had they been seeing each other? She claimed that it had only happened once, that it was a mistake, and that she didn't even know how to process it. I asked her if she had any feelings for Adam, and she said no. She swore that she loved me like a sister, that it had been a moment of weakness, and that she regretted it more than anything. After hanging up, I went into full meltdown mode. My heart felt like it was being ripped from my chest. I didn't know who to trust anymore. The one person who I thought I could always count on had just shattered everything. And Adam, my husband, the man I had trusted more than anything, the man who I thought loved me, he had done this to me. I confronted him as soon as I got home, and he was shocked, just as I expected. But that didn't make it better. He admitted it. He admitted that he had slept with Emily, and he apologized. But his apology was hollow. It was as if he was sorry that he had been caught, not truly remorseful for what he had done. He claimed that the whole thing was a mistake, that he didn't know how it had happened, that he was going through a rough patch and Emily had just been there for him. He promised it wouldn't happen again, but how could I ever believe him? How could I trust him after something like that? How could I trust Emily? The days that followed were a blur. I didn't know who I was more angry at, Adam for betraying me or Emily for sleeping with my husband. It felt like both of them had taken something sacred and destroyed it. I decided to take some space. I needed to think, to figure out what I wanted. I couldn't bear to look at either of them. I told Adam I needed time to process everything, and he didn't fight me on it. I didn't know if it was because he truly understood the gravity of what he had done, or if he was just giving me space so that he could continue living his life, without facing any real consequences. As for Emily, I couldn't even look at her. I blocked her number, avoided her messages, and didn't respond to any of her apologies. I knew she was sorry, but that didn't change the fact that she had crossed a line that should never have been crossed. Here's where things get complicated. A few weeks later, Emily reached out again, this time in person. She showed up at my door apologizing profusely, begging me to understand that she had made a horrible mistake. She even said that she had been feeling emotionally vulnerable herself, and had let herself get swept up in the moment. She told me that she hadn't meant to hurt me, that it had been a one-time thing, and that she just wanted to fix things, but I couldn't forgive her. Not yet. How could I? She had broken something. That couldn't be fixed so easily. She had torn apart the trust I had placed in her, the trust I had placed in both of them. I told her that I couldn't be friends with her anymore, that I couldn't pretend like everything was okay. I told her that I needed space, and I couldn't guarantee that I would ever forgive her for what she had done. She begged me to reconsider, promised she would never contact me again if I couldn't find it in my heart to forgive her. She cried, apologized again and again, but I stood my ground. Now, a few months later, people are starting to ask about the fallout between us. Some of my friends are calling me unreasonable, saying that I'm being too harsh on Emily, that everyone makes mistakes, and I should forgive her. Others are on my side, saying I'm justified in feeling betrayed, and that my relationship with Adam is something I have to prioritize. So now I'm here, wondering if I'm the a-hole for not forgiving Emily, for not giving her a second chance. Should I just let it go and move on? Or am I justified in wanting to cut both of them out of my life completely? Am I the a-hole for refusing to forgive my best friend after everything she did? Am I the a-hole for questioning everything about my existence after learning that my best friend Lara wasn't real? I don't even know where to begin. I feel like my body is here, but my mind isn't. I'm trapped inside a cage of shifting memories and altered versions of the world that I can no longer trust. And I don't know if it's my fault, or if I've been manipulated into this state of confusion, but I know one thing for certain: the line between what's real and what's not is blurred beyond recognition. When I saw Lara's reflection in the mirror, I froze. My heart stopped beating for what felt like an eternity, and in that moment, I realized something worse than anything I had ever thought possible. Lara wasn't real. At least, she wasn't supposed to be. I stared at the mirror in horror, unable to tear my eyes away from her smile. So perfect, so artificial, she wasn't really there. The reflection was a perfect replica of my best friend, but there was something inherently wrong with it. The reflection, like Owen's eyes, lacked depth. There was no flicker of warmth or personality behind it. She was too still, too polished. I felt like I was looking at a ghost, but it was worse because the ghost wasn't even pretending to be human. I turned around slowly, expecting the world around me to shift, to prove I had somehow lost my mind. But when I looked at the empty hallway behind me, it was normal, just as I had remembered it. Except Lara was nowhere to be found. For a moment, I considered that maybe I was just imagining things. Maybe I had spent too much time alone, had too much time to think about the impossible scenarios my brain had cooked up in the middle of the night. But then, like some sick echo from another dimension, I heard her voice. It wasn't coming from the hallway, but from inside my head, like a whisper in the back of my mind. "You were never supposed to know," she said. I tried to shake it off, but the voice persisted, this cold, calm presence that gnawed at me. The more I thought about it, the more I realized something horrible. Lara had never existed. Sure, I had memories of her. I had memories of her laughing at my stupid jokes, of us binge-watching shows together, of her showing up to my birthday party every year without fail. But what if those were just fabricated memories? What if everything was fake? What if the version of Lara I had known was just another constructed lie, another glitch in the system? I couldn't breathe. My hands were shaking, and my mind spun in 1,000 directions, each thought pulling me further into madness. I needed to talk to someone who could help me make sense of all this. But as I reached for my phone, I couldn't stop my mind from spiraling. I sent a quick message to Lara's phone, just to confirm she was real. I told myself maybe it was just my paranoia playing tricks on me, and she would respond. but she didn't. And for the first time in my life, I felt completely, utterly alone. I needed to confront Owen, but before I could go back to my apartment to face him, I received a text from a number I didn't recognize. "It's not what you think. Get out while you still can." I didn't even have time to process the message before my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a video message from an unknown contact. My heart pounded in my chest as I hesitated, staring at the video icon for a long moment before pressing play. The video was shot in the dark, the shaky camera revealing a dimly lit room. I couldn't tell where it was, maybe a basement, maybe an abandoned warehouse. And then there was a figure in the center of the frame, kneeling on the floor. The figure slowly raised their head, and I almost dropped my phone in sheer shock. It was me. Not a younger version of me, not a dreamlike reflection, but me. My exact face, my exact posture, but wrong. There was no warmth in those eyes, no flicker of life behind them. Just a blank, emotionless stare, like someone who was dead, but still walking around. I watched in frozen horror as this version of me opened its mouth and said, in the exact same voice I used to speak every day, "You've been replaced." The message ended there. My phone screen went black. I felt like I had just stepped into some twisted alternate reality, where everything I thought was true was a lie, where even my memories were fake. Was I real? Was anyone around me real? Was I just an experiment being toyed with by forces I couldn't comprehend? I stood in the middle of the room, paralyzed, not knowing what to do. I could hear Owen's voice in my head again, this time louder, like he was directly beside me, whispering in my ear, "You can't escape. You're already inside. You've always been inside." But what did that mean? Was I still in the world I thought I knew? Or had I been swept away into something far darker, far more twisted, something that had distorted me, my family, my friendships, into puppets in a game I didn't understand? I needed answers, and that's when I made the decision to confront Owen. I had to go to him, no matter how impossible it seemed. I needed to know the truth. I made my way to his apartment, my mind racing, my pulse pounding in my ears. But when I arrived and knocked on his door, I found it wide open, as though he had been expecting me. The apartment was eerily quiet. There was no sign of Owen, no sign of anyone, really. But something was different. The air smelled stale, almost like dust, as though the place hadn't been lived in for weeks. I took a cautious step inside, my shoes squeaking on the hardwood floor. My eyes scanned the room, but there was nothing. No personal items, no furniture. The walls were bare, the shelves were empty. It felt like a set, like a stage waiting to be filled with actors who would never show up. And then, on the wall, I saw it. A photo. It was a photo of me, my brother, and Lara, except there was no Lara in this version of the photo. There was someone else, someone who looked exactly like her, but wrong. A perfect, symmetrical version of her face, but again hollow, like a mannequin. I stepped closer to examine the picture, and then I saw the words scrawled in thick black ink beneath it. "You're not real either." That was the moment when it all shattered. Am I the a-hole for legally emancipating my 15-year-old brother after discovering he wasn't born but constructed, and possibly not by our parents? My name is Dana, 28F, and I swear I didn't believe any of this at first. I've always considered myself rational, level-headed, someone who grounds herself in the real. I work in city planning and policy analysis. Numbers, data, structure. That's my world. I don't traffic in fantasy, conspiracies, or whatever this has become. But I'm writing this now because I'm either losing my mind or something. Else entirely is happening. Something much, much worse. It started last winter after my mother died. It was sudden. A car accident. She was hit by a driver who'd had a seizure behind the wheel. Killed instantly. My dad had passed years ago from cancer. So I became the legal guardian of my 15-year-old half-brother Owen. We share a mother but not a father. Owen is all quiet. Always has been. Observant. Doesn't talk much. Has this calm, unnerving intelligence about him, the kind that makes teachers describe him as brilliant but distant. After Mom died, Owen barely reacted. At the funeral, he didn't cry. He just stood next to the casket and whispered something I couldn't hear. Then he turned to me and said, "It's okay. She doesn't end here." I chalked it up to shock. We were both grieving in our own ways. When I moved Owen into my apartment, that's when things started to fall apart. The first night he asked if the walls were thick enough. I assumed he meant for noise, but he clarified. To block the extraction signals. I laughed, thinking it was some weird teen techno babble. He didn't laugh. Then he asked if I could rearrange the furniture so the bed wasn't facing the window. "That's how they sink dreams," he said. I thought he was just going through something, maybe autistic, maybe PTSD. I got him a therapist. She lasted 2 sessions before telling me she was uncomfortable continuing care. She said Owen kept asking her how many times she'd been reset, and what version of herself she thought she was. He asked her to draw her house from memory, then told her which details were wrong, and that he knew because he'd seen it reconstructed. She asked if he had a photographic memory. He said, "No, but they let me keep a few memories this time." When I pressed him about it, he told me not to worry, that none of this would matter once the border drops. Around this time, I started noticing strange changes in the apartment. Items not where I left them. Subtle things. A knife facing the wrong direction. My toothbrush wet when I hadn't used it yet. A photograph of me and Mom, except in this version, I was wearing a dress I've never owned. I assumed I was just exhausted. Grief does weird things, but it got worse. One morning I woke up to find Owen standing in the hallway, staring at my bedroom door. When I opened it, he said, "I just wanted to make sure it was still you today." I laughed nervously, but he didn't smile. "Last time you had green eyes," he said. "You don't remember? I made an appointment with a neurologist. For both of us. I thought maybe we were experiencing a shared psychosis, stress-induced. But before the appointment, I found something in Owen's room that shattered my sense of reality. He had a journal. It wasn't written in English or any language I recognized, but there were diagrams, thousands, pages and pages of complex architectural blueprints. Some were anatomical, others looked like circuit boards. One showed a human, figure with layers peeling back, bone, muscle, nerves, but instead of organs there were rooms, stairs, doorways, a full internal layout like a building inside a person. There was one blueprint labeled Dana V4.3A, faulted memory spine. It showed my silhouette. Underneath it read, "Issue recursion detected in grief processing. Solution, terminate maternal instance. Deploy sibling anchor." I stared at it for hours, then confronted him. He didn't deny it. He just looked at me and said, "I wasn't supposed to let you see it yet. They said you'd break." I asked him who they were. He replied, "The ones watching this version, the beta filters, you call them neighbors." I laughed, cried, screamed. He stayed calm, like he wasn't a kid at all, like he was waiting for me to reach a certain reaction. That night, I didn't sleep. I Googled everything I could about psychological dissociation, schizophrenia, mass hallucinations, but nothing explained what I found next. My birth certificate had changed. I swear on everything I own, it changed. It had always said I was born in May 1997. I remember the hospital, the stories Mom told me about the snowstorm, but now the certificate said Deseret Facility, Born 14A, constructed, 3/14/97, version D3X, parentals, not applicable. I panicked, tore apart my files, found old report cards, school photos, tax forms, all updated, all showing the same Deseret Facility in place of traditional schools or birthplaces. When I confronted Owen again, he just nodded. "It's leaking early," he said. "They'll push an update soon. If we're lucky, you won't even remember this part." I tried calling the police. They came, spoke to Owen, then left 5 minutes later, smiling and waving like nothing was wrong. But one of the officers had my eyes, same scar above the brow, same mole near the chin. I checked the squad car as they drove off. It had no license plates. The next day, Owen gave me a manila envelope. Inside were printed screenshots from an online forum I'd never visited, our Forum Echo, threads titled, "Anyone else glitching since the update?" And "I keep waking up in the wrong version of my apartment." Hundreds of users, all reporting similar experiences. One post was from someone named Signal Diver 88. The user photo, my mother, but aged up, and the last comment she posted, before going silent. Terminate version Owen, he's the key. That was the tipping point. I contacted a lawyer and filed paperwork for legal emancipation, not for Owen, for myself. I argued that Owen had no legal guardianship because no proof of birth or parentage could be verified, that he wasn't a real person, just data, a system running itself. The courts didn't fight me. They approved it within 48 hours. No appeals, no paperwork trails. Owen signed the papers without blinking. Before he left, he looked me in the eyes and said, "They'll try to fill the gap with another version. When that happens, don't believe her. She won't cry the same way." I asked where he was going. He shrugged. "Probably back into the background, or maybe nowhere. We never really leave. We just stop rendering." And then he walked into the woods behind my building, and never came out. It's been 3 weeks. Every night I wake up at 3:33 a.m. to the sound of knocking under the floorboards. My TV flickers to static when I say Owen's name. And this morning, my neighbor, Mrs. Capel, who's lived across the hall for 10 years, greeted me with, "Nice to meet you, Dana. Is your brother visiting?" So am I the a-hole? For emancipating a kid who might not have even been human? For cutting ties with someone who might have been protecting me from something bigger than either of us? Or am I the a-hole for still believing in some quiet, traitorous part of me that maybe I built this version myself and none of you actually exist? Am I the a-hole for questioning my own existence after my brother returned, but I'm not sure if it's really him? I don't even know where to begin this time. It's been almost 2 months since I legally emancipated Owen. Since I thought I did. Since I thought I shut down the version of him I had been living with all my life. But something is terribly wrong, and I feel like I've been wandering in circles trying to find a way out of a maze that no longer has walls, just empty space where nothing is solid. After my last post, things spiraled. I thought I was losing my grip on reality, maybe starting to hallucinate, but I knew what I saw, I knew what happened. I knew it in the marrow of my bones. Yet when I tried to tell anyone else, when I reached out to friends or even my old therapist, everything fell apart. I was mistreated, dismissed, ignored, like my words were just glitches in a system that didn't allow for anything outside its established parameters. You know that feeling when you hear a song you haven't heard in years, and suddenly it transports you to a moment in time? It feels almost realer than what's happening now. It's like your body remembers it more than your mind does. That's what happened to me when Owen, the other Owen, came back. I'd woken up to a knock on my door, around 3 a.m. again. I was groggy, confused, convinced I had fallen back into one of my sleepless nightmares. I stumbled to the door, feeling this strange, heavy pull inside my chest, like I was being dragged into something beyond my control. I thought it was a neighbor at first, maybe Mrs. Capel again, or some bureaucrat checking up on me for filing emancipation papers too quickly. But when I opened the door, there he was, Owen. I should have known something was wrong. The air was too still, the light in the hallway too dim. But there he was, standing at my door, looking like the same kid I had sent off into the woods months ago, but not quite. This version of Owen had changed. His eyes were different. That might sound like a cliché, but it's not. There was a wrongness to them. They were still that sharp, calculating shade of hazel, but this time they were too clear, like they were too real. Almost too clean. There was no depth behind them, no shadows or reflections, just emptiness. I couldn't quite look at them for too long, so I looked away to focus on his face. His expression was the same calm serenity that I had always associated with him, detached, cool, unreadable. But there was a flicker, a tiny twitch of his mouth, like he was trying not to smile. "Dana," he said, "you weren't supposed to notice. I'm sorry. I didn't expect this iteration to bypass you." His voice was wrong too. Not that it was higher or lower than usual, but it lacked the natural rhythm, the hesitations that came with his sentences. It was mechanical, like he was following a script. I asked him how he had found me, why he was back, but instead of answering, he just said, "You're still not rendering correctly. They'll fix you soon." And that's when I realized this version wasn't mine. The Owen I had known all my life, the real Owen, or whatever I thought of as real, was gone. This thing standing in front of me had changed. It wasn't just the eyes. The way he spoke was too rehearsed, too perfect. It was like he had studied me, memorized me to a terrifying degree. I demanded answers. I needed something, anything, that could explain how he was back, how he had come from nowhere. But instead of responding, he just stepped inside and closed the door behind him. I don't know what happened next, but everything went wrong from there. I could feel it inside, like something in my mind had been disturbed, scrambled, shifted, like I had been rebooted. I couldn't remember the last few hours. I couldn't remember a single thought I'd had. It was as if I had woken up in a new version of myself. One that had been programmed to react differently, like someone was playing puppeteer with my memories, pulling strings that I couldn't see. I tried to leave. I went to the window, and I swear to God I saw my reflection. Not in the glass, but in the fogged-up surface of the bathroom mirror. It wasn't me, or maybe it was, but it was an old version of me, one that looked different than I remembered. A little younger, a little more idealized, a little more static. The mirror felt wrong, like it was distorted by some invisible force pressing up against it. That's when I heard Owen again, from the living room. "I've been given this version of you. I can't control what you remember," he said. "But I can keep you here. That's all I'm allowed to do now. If you fight it, they'll just reset you again." I felt the room start to close in on me, like the walls were pushing me back towards the mirror. The weight of it crushed me. I tried to leave again, but my feet wouldn't move. They felt stuck, like they were cemented into the floor. And that's when I realized I didn't know what was real anymore. Was it the world around me, or was it Owen? Was I being watched, or was I simply trapped in a simulation? I asked him again, this time with panic clawing at my throat, what was going on. But his answer was just a quiet, emotionless response. "You were never supposed to make it this far. This wasn't part of the original script, but we'll make it work. I'll help you forget." I don't know how long I stood there trying to breathe through the fog in my head until I felt the warmth of my phone buzzing in my pocket. It was a text from my best friend Lara. "Hey, I need to talk. I've been feeling like I'm not me lately, and I know you've been dealing with him stuff, but there's something I need to show you. Can we meet?" Lara was in the city, but we hadn't spoken much lately. I had been distant. I couldn't tell her any of this. She wouldn't understand. But in that moment, I had an idea, a glimmer of hope. Maybe she was real. Maybe I could find someone who wasn't part of this twisted loop. I had to meet her. I managed to fight my way out of the apartment. Owen didn't stop me. In fact, he just stood there watching me leave with that same unsettling, perfect smile. But before I could make it to the door, something felt wrong. Turned to look back at him, and that's when I saw it. The reflection in the hallway mirror wasn't mine, it was Lara's, and it wasn't even real. Am I the a-hole for telling my husband he's not the father of our daughter, because he's not even who he thinks he is? My life was a lie, every single piece of it. And I was the one who pulled the last thread that unraveled everything. I, 34F, met my husband, 36 Mac, let's call him Ian, when we were both working for a regional tech startup in our late 20s. He was charismatic but reserved, incredibly intelligent but strangely naive about emotional cues. He moved like someone trained to blend in. I know how crazy that sounds, but it's not something I noticed until years later, once everything else started slipping through the cracks. At first, our relationship was normal, awkward even. Ian didn't have any family, or rather, that's what he told me. Orphaned. Young, raised in foster homes, moved around a lot. He never gave me names or towns, just vague sketches that at the time I chalked up to pain or trauma. We got married within a year. I was head over heels, and he seemed to want a real life with me. He was affectionate, generous, devoted, but there were rules. Ian didn't like being touched while asleep, didn't want mirrors in the bedroom, said certain music gave him migraines. He kept his childhood photos in a locked drawer and said they were too painful to look at. I didn't push. I figured he'd open up someday. That was a mistake. 2 years in, I got pregnant. He was thrilled, or said he was. But then strange things started happening. When I showed him the first ultrasound, he stared at it for nearly 5 minutes and whispered, "That's not possible." I thought he meant the timing. I told him the conception date matched. He nodded, smiled, and never brought it up again. Then came the paranoia. He stopped sleeping, barricaded the doors at night, said someone was following us, started calling our daughter version 2. When I asked what the hell he meant, he said, "She won't be like the first one." They promised. Then he acted like he hadn't said anything at all. I chalked it up to anxiety and exhaustion. We went to therapy. Ian was resistant, said he didn't trust surveillance shrinks. That was the phrase he used. Surveillance shrinks. I laughed it off. Mistake number 2. The turning point was our daughter's birth. A beautiful, healthy baby girl. Except the moment Ian held her, he whispered something I'll never forget. "She's clean, untethered." They didn't find her. Then he kissed her forehead and cried, not happy tears, the kind of sobbing you do when something has ended, not begun. For the first year, he was obsessed with her, read her every study on neurodevelopment, watched her sleep, measured her head daily. I thought he was just being a nerdy first-time dad. But then one night he woke me up at 2 a.m. holding a syringe, said he needed to extract a baseline sample from her. I freaked out, screamed, took the baby and locked myself in the bathroom until morning. He apologized, said it was a sleepwalking episode, that he didn't remember any of it. That was mistake number 3. I should have left. But I didn't. Instead, I did what he never thought I would. I went into the locked drawer. I know I violated his trust, but I had to understand who I was married to. Inside were old photos, but not of Ian as a kid. They were photos of other children. Some looked like Ian, some didn't. Some were in labs, others in classrooms. All had barcodes on their necks or wrists. I'm not joking, like product codes. There were documents, folders marked Project IO, Pattern Seedling, and Narrative Fusion. At first I thought it was a game, an RG maybe, but then I found a file with his name, or rather names. Ian wasn't Ian. He'd been someone named Marcus before, and Edward before that. He'd been adopted repeatedly, legally re-identified, and moved every 5-7 years. He wasn't a person, he was an experiment. I confronted him. He didn't deny it. He sat down, calm as still water, and said, "I was never meant to form attachments. You're a glitch, so is she." That's when I realized I wasn't the love of his life. I was his test, his stressor, his psychological threshold. And our daughter? She was the variable that wasn't supposed to exist. I did what any mother would do. I took her and ran, moved to another state, changed our names, filed for divorce, no contact. I even faked my own death online, leaked a car crash story. Ian never followed, but I still got letters, typed, no return address. I see her in every mirror. Do you remember the pattern? They'll come for her too. Then, last month, something even worse happened. I got a call from a hospital in Ohio. A woman named Dr. Kessler said Ian had been found wandering naked in a field, reciting number sequences. He had no ID, but was muttering our daughter's real name. She somehow traced it back to me. I told her everything. She listened. Then she asked if I had any documents. I sent her copies. She called back later and said, "I don't know how to tell you this." But these files, Project IO, Pattern Seedling, they were ours. Government contracts cancelled in 2003. You shouldn't have these. Then she hung up. The next day, my daughter, now 4, told me she had a new imaginary friend named Mirror Ian. She said he talks backwards and tells her not to tell Mommy about the door under her bed. I checked. Nothing there. But now every night, she stacks her books around the bed to keep the door shut. I don't sleep anymore. Which brings me to now. I told my daughter the truth, that Ian is not coming back, that he wasn't her real father, not in the emotional sense, not even in the biological one. I had a paternity test done, twice. They came back inconclusive. No match to any known genome sequences, like she was born from someone who didn't officially exist. And I told Ian, through a letter I left at his hospital, you're not her father, because you're not real, not to me, not anymore. And maybe not even to yourself. His doctors say he stopped talking after that, just sits in the window, smiling, rocking, like he finally solved the equation. So, am I the a-hole, for ripping apart the only family he ever had? For telling our daughter the man who loved her most was never who he claimed to be? Or am I the a-hole for letting this go on for so long, and maybe passing the experiment on to her? Am I the a-hole for exposing that my wife never actually existed? She was a persona my foster parents created and forced me to marry so they could harvest my inheritance, and now everyone thinks I killed her. I, 29 Mounts, don't know how to start. This because I don't know where the lie ends and the truth begins anymore. Every time I think I've peeled back the last layer of deception, there's another one. I'm not even sure I know who I am anymore. This is the story of how I lost my mind, my identity and my freedom, because the people I trusted most built my entire life out of lies and made the world believe I murdered someone who never even existed. When I was 4, my parents died in a house fire. That part is true. There are death certificates, a burned down property, a closed case. I was too young to remember much beyond smoke, hands pulling me out, and then a long white hallway in a hospital. After that, I was placed into foster care. Enter Caleb and Miriam, my new parents. They were foster parents with a clean record and Christian values. That's what the state saw. What they didn't see was how deeply twisted they were beneath the facade. At first, things were normal. I had food, clothes, a bed. They homeschooled me, said public schools were factories for the devil's ideas. I wasn't allowed to make friends, not even at church. You're special, they'd say, chosen. I was taught that my parents had died because they were sinners who loved money more than God. I had to atone for their sins. At 7, they started waking me up at 3:33 a.m. every night for repentance rituals. I had to kneel on rice and recite prayers until my knees bled. If I cried, I was purged. Cold baths, isolation chambers, fasting. I didn't even know. It was abuse. It was all I knew. Then, when I turned 12, things shifted. They introduced her. Her name was Lily. She was my betrothed. A girl my age, also homeschooled. Miriam said she was the daughter of a missionary family they were helping. Lily was soft-spoken, kind, a little off, but like me, shaped by rules and prayers. We were told we were soulmates, that God had chosen us. Every year on our birthday, same day, coincidence, we had a spiritual union ceremony. By 18, we were married, legally somehow. I didn't question it. I'd never been taught to question anything. We moved into a cottage on Caleb and Miriam's land. No job, no IDs. We lived off donations from the church and a mysterious trust fund they said came from Lily's family. I accepted everything. I didn't know how to question reality. But over time, things started to fray. Lily would glitch. Sometimes I'd ask her a question about her childhood, and she'd freeze like she was trying to remember a script. She had a notebook she guarded fiercely. I once peeked and saw pages that said, "Remember the lie. Remember the name. I am Lily, I am his wife. I am not real." That was the first time I thought I was losing my mind. I confronted Miriam. She wept, said Lily had dissociative episodes from past trauma, that I had to be strong for her, that God was testing me. Caleb just stared. That blank, terrifying stare he always used when I said something sinful. I backed off, but I started watching more closely. I found records, bank statements, IDs, birth certificates. Nothing matched. Lily's social security number belonged to a dead girl. Her mother was actually Caleb's niece. The marriage license was forged. The trust fund? My parents. My inheritance. Millions. Life insurance. Property. All signed away when I turned 18 through my wife. When I tried to run, they drugged me. I woke up strapped to a hospital bed. A doctor diagnosed me with schizoaffective disorder. I was pumped full of antipsychotics, put in a mental facility. For 6 months. They said I'd had a delusional break, invented the conspiracy to cope with a failing marriage. I was told Lily had killed herself during my episode, jumped off a bridge, body never recovered. They had photos of me standing on the ledge, screaming. I didn't remember it. I didn't remember any of it. My mind was a black hole. When I got out, I was a ghost. No money, no documents, no wife, no legal claim to anything. Miriam and Caleb held a funeral. The church mourned. I was treated like a pariah. People whispered that I'd pushed her, that I'd gone insane and gotten away with murder. I lived in shelters, couch-surfed, for 2 years, until I found Lily again. She was alive. Different name, different town, working as a clerk at a gas station. I nearly passed out. She saw me and ran. I caught her outside. She begged me not to blow her cover, said her real name was Anna, said she'd been part of the project. That Miriam and Caleb weren't her parents, they were handlers, that I was part of something bigger, that I wasn't just chosen, I was engineered. She gave me a USB drive, said it was all she had left. Then she vanished again. I tried to open it, corrupted, but I managed to extract one folder, the rewrite. Inside were documents, medical records, therapy logs, blueprints, pages upon pages detailing cognitive scripting, identity suppression, and something called erasure. Apparently my birth identity had been systematically erased and replaced over 15 years, so that when I turned 18, I could legally sign over everything without realizing it. Lily Anna was planted to make the lie real. I went to the police. They laughed me out. I went to a lawyer. She believed me, until her office was broken into and all my files vanished. Then I started receiving texts. You're next. You should have stayed in your role. No one believes a crazy man, so I changed tactics. I started uploading everything to Reddit, bit by bit, documents, audio, photos. Some people said I was insane, others believed me. A few even found connections, other projects across the country. Other kids raised like me, some dead, some missing, some still pretending to be people they're not. Now I live off the grid. No phone, no address, just a laptop, solar charger, and a VPN. But the rumors keep spreading that I killed my wife, that I escaped a psych ward, that I'm dangerous. Sometimes I wonder if they're right. I hear Lily's voice at night, or Anna's or Miriam's, sometimes all three. So here I am, asking the internet. Am I the a-hole for destroying the lives of the people who stole mine, exposed a conspiracy no one believes, and made myself the villain of my own story in the process?
Am I the a-hole for exposing my parents as cult leaders during their anniversary party, even though it revealed I was kidnapped as a child, not adopted like I was told, and that my entire life has been a lie, built on religious manipulation, and Stockholm Syndrome? I, 29 me, don't know who I am anymore. I'm writing this because I need to say it somewhere, and because I don't know if I'll ever find peace. For years I thought I had a painful but beautiful origin story, that I was adopted at age 5 by a loving Christian couple after my birth parents died in a tragic accident, that my new family gave me a second chance, a real home, and a sense of spiritual purpose. That's the story I grew up hearing from my parents, Samuel and Miriam, both now in their 60s. They were devout, kind, strict, but always talked about how God brought me to them in their hour of need. It wasn't a normal household, but I thought it was special. We lived in a gated community in rural Montana, a mission retreat, they called it. About 80 people lived there, all wearing modest handmade clothes, working together in farming and prayer. No internet, no television, no phone calls that weren't monitored. I was homeschooled with religious texts as our curriculum. We memorized scripture every morning before breakfast and fasted once a week to remain humble. We weren't allowed to speak to outsiders except during monthly outings where we sold handmade crafts or produce at markets. I always thought we were just different, not wrong. I didn't know any better. When I was 17, I asked too many questions. I'd found a battered old biology book in a forgotten storage shed that talked about evolution, the solar system, basic genetics. I asked Miriam why we were never taught any of this. She slapped me. I had never been hit before. That night, Samuel and 2 other elders pulled me from bed and locked me in the basement of the church building. I was told I was corrupted, under Satan's influence, and needed spiritual cleansing. I spent 9 days there, alone, with only bread, water, and Bible verses slipped under the door. When they let me out, I didn't speak for a week, but I never asked again. When I turned 18, they told me I was ready to be a shepherd. I was given responsibilities, leading morning prayer, managing supplies, escorting younger members. To work sites, I obeyed, out of fear, out of numbness. I thought they were right, that I had been lost, and they saved me, until I met her. Her name was Kayla. She was 19, new to the community, sent by her parents from Oregon to recover from her addiction. But Kayla wasn't broken. She was awake. She saw things. She asked questions. At first I tried to fix her, quoting scripture and urging obedience. Instead, she made me doubt. She'd whisper things in the fields. Questions like, "Have you ever seen a real doctor?" or "What did your adoption papers look like?" I told her I didn't know. She said that wasn't normal, that adoption records are a matter of law, that everyone has a birth certificate. I told her mine was in God's hands. She told me that wasn't an answer. It was a cage. One night, she snuck into my sleeping quarters and showed me a pocket radio she had smuggled in. Static. Then voices. Then a song. I cried. It was the first music I'd heard that wasn't sung in worship. It felt like a betrayal and a miracle. She told me she was planning to run, that she wanted me to come, that if we stayed, we'd never leave. I told her I'd pray on it. The next day, she disappeared. They told us she had a breakdown and the Lord called her home, but I knew better. They killed her, or locked her away. I still don't know which. That's when I started planning. It took 2 years. 2 years of pretending. I slowly gained more access to documents, tools, names. I stole keys. I memorized routes. I waited for the annual anniversary celebration, a weekend when outside vendors were allowed in, when the gates were looser. I escaped during a delivery on the second night. I stole a van, drove until the tank ran dry, and stumbled into a rural gas station at 3 a.m. in my sweat-soaked homemade clothes and sandals. I had never used an ATM, never held a smartphone. I barely spoke normal English. The clerk called the sheriff. That was 7 years ago. The police thought I was delusional. I had no ID, no birth record, no social security number. I didn't exist. They nearly committed me. But one officer, a woman named Ruiz, believed me. She pulled strings, got me into a transitional program, helped me file for identity documentation through a state program for undocumented youth. It took 18 months before I had a legal name again. I chose Eli. Ruiz didn't stop there. She quietly opened a federal investigation. I gave everything I knew, maps, routines, names, rituals, locations. But without hard evidence of abuse, they couldn't touch the community. They were self-sufficient, private, deeply religious, and isolated by choice. So I vanished again. I spent the next 5 years rebuilding. I went to school, got my GED, then a college degree in psychology. I worked in libraries, then a crisis center. I volunteered with cult survivors. I tried to reclaim my voice. And then, it happened. I saw a missing child flyer in an old case archive I was helping digitize. A boy named Zachary, missing since 1999, age 4, taken from a church parking lot in Wyoming. The photo was blurry, but I felt something twist inside me. I requested more documents. FOIA requests, local news, police sketches, witness statements. Then I did something terrifying. I sent in a DNA sample to a private investigator I knew, under the radar, not through legal channels. I couldn't risk it getting tied up. The results came back. 99.98% match. I was Zachary. My birth parents were Daniel and Lisa Halloran, alive, still together, still searching. They never gave up. I wept for 6 hours when I called them. My mother's voice was like hearing music again. My father sobbed. They had a daughter, too, my sister Kira, who never got to meet me. She was 22 now. She said she used to pray that her ghost brother would return someday. We planned a reunion, but first I had to do one last thing. The retreat, was celebrating its 40th anniversary. A massive event, live-streamed online for the first time ever. Samuel and Miriam were being honored for 4 decades of faith and leadership. I created a new identity online, registered for the event as a returning disciple. I shaved my beard, dyed my hair, put on the handmade shirt I'd kept all these years. I walked in like a ghost. When they saw me, they froze. I didn't give them a chance to react. I walked onto the stage during Samuel's speech and took the mic. I told the audience everything. How I was kidnapped at age 4 by Samuel and Miriam during a missionary trip. How they faked adoption papers and isolated me. How they brainwashed dozens of others into a life of obedience, fear, and silence. How they murdered Kayla, or hid her, when she tried to flee. How I had evidence, DNA, proof, names, maps, documents. I told them my name. Not Eli. Not God's soldier, Zachary Halloran. Then I looked at the camera and said, "Mom, Dad, Kira, I'm coming home." The room erupted. Samuel lunged at me. Miriam collapsed. Security dragged me out. Within 24 hours, the FBI raided the compound. They found hidden rooms, chains, journals, letters from others who had tried to escape. The basement where I'd been held. Samuel and Miriam were arrested. Dozens of others were taken into protective custody. Survivors scattered. Some were furious. Others relieved. A few didn't even believe what I'd said. The media turned it into a frenzy. But here's where I ask you, Reddit. People are calling me an a-hole for destroying the only home those people had. For humiliating my adoptive parents in front of the entire world, for using deception and theatrics instead of quiet justice. Even some of the survivors said I should have let it go, that they were at peace, and I ripped that from them. My sister Kira cried when I told her what I did. She said, "You didn't have to torch it. You could have just walked away." So now I'm wondering, am I the a-hole for blowing up the only life I ever knew in order to find the one that was stolen from me? Am I the a-hole for telling my dying sister that I'm not her twin, not her sibling, not even her family, because we were both kidnapped as babies and raised in a fake family by a woman who murdered our real parents to collect social benefits? And I finally uncovered the truth when I found her body in our basement? I don't even know how to write this. I've been staring at this blinking cursor for hours, fingers cold, my coffee untouched, the lights off even though it's nearly midnight. My name is, well, it used to be Melissa, but that name is a lie, like everything else in my life. I'm 28F, and the only reason I put a question mark after my age is because I'm not entirely sure when I was born. I grew up believing I was born in July on a beautiful summer day, 10 minutes before my twin sister Marina. We were miracles raised by a single mom named Deborah, who always told us how we came early, too small, barely alive, and how she fought to keep us. I believed that for most of my life. I believed she was a hero. I believed we were a family. And now, I believe she was a monster. Let me back up. Marina was always the fragile one. Not mentally. No, she was brilliant. Top of her class, creative, poetic, soft-spoken, but emotionally rich. But she was sick. Chronically sick. Autoimmune disorders, constant infections, allergies that kept her isolated. I used to think our bond was something sacred, like we were two halves of the same soul. We had our own language growing up. We shared dreams. We could finish each other's sentences. I loved her more than I loved myself. I would have died for her. I thought I knew everything about her. I thought she knew everything about me. But that was the first lie. We were 27 when she was diagnosed with a rare and aggressive cancer. It was already stage 4. The doctors gave her 6 months, maybe less. It shattered us. She had never even lived, never dated, never left our small, new Hampshire town, never saw the ocean up close. Deborah took the news with eerie calm. Not grief, not denial, just cold detachment. She said, "God has a plan." Marina cried into my lap that night, saying she didn't want to die in that house. I promised her I would take her anywhere. But Deborah refused to let her leave. Said she needed familiarity, safety, protection. We were too exhausted to fight. Then Marina started to unravel. Not physically, emotionally. She began saying strange things in the middle of the night, like, "Have you ever wondered why we don't look alike?" Or, "Don't you think it's strange we've never seen our birth certificates?" I laughed it off at first, but she got obsessed. She asked Deborah point blank one night in front of me, "Are we really twins?" Deborah didn't answer, just stared. Then said, "Don't ask questions you don't want answers to." And that was when the cracks began to show. Marina became paranoid. She claimed someone was watching her at night, that she heard noises under the floorboards. I blamed the meds, the anxiety, the cancer. Until I heard them too. Whispers, scraping, footsteps under the house. Deborah insisted it was rats. She even called pest control, who found nothing. But the noises didn't stop. In fact, they got worse. I set up my phone to record overnight. What I caught on video made me vomit. At 2:13 a.m., a section of the floor beneath Marina's bed lifted. A hatch I never knew existed opened from below, and Deborah crawled out, slowly, silently, wearing what looked like a veil made of skin or wax paper. She hovered over Marina for exactly 11 minutes, didn't touch her, just stood there, breathing, watching, then disappeared back into the floor. I confronted her the next day, trembling. She said I was dreaming and making up horror stories. I showed her the video. She smashed my phone with a hammer. That's when I knew we weren't safe. I started digging, literally and metaphorically. First, I pried open the section of floor, found the hatch. A narrow wooden staircase led to a basement I didn't know existed. Our house didn't have a basement, at least that's what I'd been told. It wasn't even a proper room, just dirt walls, mold, mildew, and a smell so thick it clung to my lungs. I found dozens of small, sealed boxes. Inside them, teeth, baby shoes, locks of hair, ID cards, birth certificates, not just 1 or 2, over 20. All children. None of them had the same last name. All of them had one thing in common. They'd all gone missing between 1990 and 2002. I found a journal too, dated and written in an eerie, calm script. Deborah's handwriting, page after page of child observations, behavioral notes, punishments, spiritual reflections. None of the children lasted more than 18 months. Some were unworthy. Others could not be taught obedience. Then, finally, The perfect pair. The girls are quiet, beautiful, simple, Marina and Melissa. Names I gave them, names they'll keep. They are mine now, mine forever. I nearly passed out. I took the journal, photos. One of the ID cards was mine, except it wasn't. It said my name was Elsie Ann Trumbull, kidnapped, at age 2 from a parking lot in Maine. Marina's ID was under the name Adeline Mora, taken from a daycare fire that was ruled an accident. Our real mothers were murdered. Deborah hadn't adopted us. She'd collected us, raised us in a world of control, isolation, and fake love to build her perfect daughters. I fled the house, called the police from a motel 4 towns over. They raided the home the next morning. Deborah didn't resist. She just smiled, said they finally remember. I wasn't allowed to see her. She was taken into federal custody. Marina broke. She was already dying. This revelation shattered what was left. She stopped eating, refused chemo. Spent her final days lying in a hospital bed staring at the ceiling. I sat with her every day, read to her, held her hand, but she wouldn't speak. On the 4th night, she whispered, "If I'm not Marina, who am I?" I told her she was still her. That identity isn't about names, but the truth is, I didn't believe it. Neither did she. 2 nights before she passed, she asked me to tell her everything. The truth. All of it. I did, she cried quietly. Then she looked at me and said, "You're not my sister." I nodded. "But I still love you," she said. "That's worse." Then she turned away from me and never spoke to me again. She died, in silence, at the funeral, if you can call it that. I was the only one there. No one claimed her. Her real family was never identified. Mine was long dead. I buried her under the name Marina, because that's who she was to me. I wept like I'd lost my twin. Because in a way, I had. Even if we weren't blood, we were all each other ever had. Now I'm alone. The story made the news. True crime podcasts picked it up. The doll maker mom, they call Deborah. Turns out she'd been receiving welfare checks under different names for years, staging fake deaths, hiding remains, making children disappear. But no one knew, no one saw, no one believed the quiet woman with 2 pretty daughters and a neat garden. But now strangers online are calling me an attention-seeking liar. Some are saying I'm mentally ill, that the whole thing is a hoax. Others say I'm the a-hole for breaking Marina's heart before she died, that I should have let her believe the lie, let her die peacefully without the horror. So I ask you, am I the a-hole for telling my sister the truth before she died, even though it destroyed her, just so I could finally feel real again? Am I the a-hole for using a fake identity to uncover who my real parents are, only to find out I was the product of an affair between my uncle and my sister, and that my entire family orchestrated a massive lie to protect their reputations, including my wife, who knew everything and married me anyway? I'm 35 going to be as honest as possible, even if what I'm about to write makes me sound like the worst person alive. But if I don't lay it all out, I'll go insane. I've lived inside a carefully constructed fiction my entire life, and now that the truth has exploded in my face, I don't know who I am, who I was, or who I'm allowed to be anymore. My name, or at least the one I've used for decades, is Matt. I was raised by a woman I believed was my older half-sister, Angie, 54F, and her husband Brian, 56 Alet, who I thought of as my uncle. I grew up in a conservative, tightly woven Southern family. Angie was technically my guardian, but we were raised under the illusion that she had adopted me from a distant cousin who couldn't raise a child. That's what I was told from age 7 onward, after some vague, traumatic early years in group homes I barely remember. I was homeschooled after 3rd grade, taught that family comes first, and that questions were disobedience. Brian, my uncle, was a strict stoic figure who rarely spoke to me beyond barking orders or lecturing about morality. He was always weirdly distant, but watched me with a piercing stare that made my skin crawl. Angie, meanwhile, oscillated between maternal affection and unnerving boundary issues. She'd sometimes get emotional and call me her beautiful boy in this uncomfortably intimate tone, and then switch to acting like I was a rebellious teenager ruining her life. I moved out at 19 after a screaming match about me dating a girl from a different background. I worked odd jobs, put myself through community college, and tried to build a life. I married a woman named Jess, 34F, at 24, smart, warm, deeply empathetic. She seemed to ground me. When we met, she told me I was mystery wrapped in armor, and for the first time I felt seen. For a long time, I left the past behind, but there were always cracks, little things. Jess would ask why I didn't have any baby photos. Angie said they were lost in a house fire. There was no birth certificate. Adoption records sealed. Every question led to a roadblock. Then, 2 years ago, my wife and I were trying for a baby. Standard tests showed an unusual genetic marker in my DNA. The doctor gently suggested that I might want to trace my biological background in case hereditary conditions were present. That's when I finally decided to investigate. I hired a private investigator under the table, paid out of pocket from side work. I didn't want Angie or Brian to know. I didn't even tell Jess. I had no idea what I'd find, but I felt like something had always been off. I submitted a DNA sample under a false name, not wanting the results linked directly to me. The results came back, and what they revealed made my blood freeze. A woman named Margaret, 76F, flagged as a probable grandmother, had a profile on the Ancestry platform. So did 2 others, Angie, flagged not as my sister but as a biological mother, and Brian, flagged not as my uncle, but as a possible first-degree relative. That couldn't be right. Angie was my sister. Brian was my uncle by marriage, right? Wrong. They were my parents. I didn't believe it. I thought there was an error. I confronted Angie. I told her I had reason to believe the adoption story was a lie. She broke down, said it was time I knew the truth. But what she told me was even more disturbing than I expected. When Angie was 17, she was sent away to a Christian girls' home after getting pregnant. The family story was that some older boy had forced himself on her, but the real story? Angie got pregnant by Brian, her own brother-in-law at the time, who was married to her older sister. Brian had coerced her into a sexual relationship when she was 16. My birth was the result. The family found out and sent her away to hide. The scandal. When she returned, she pretended to be my older half-sister. Brian left his wife, married Angie, and they adopted me under a fake story. That was the life I lived. I was raised by the man who raped my mother, under the illusion that he was my uncle-turned-father. The woman I thought was my sister was my mother. My grandparents covered it up. The whole extended family knew. They all knew. They just chose silence. It gets worse. When I told Jess all this, expecting comfort, horror, solidarity, she didn't react like I expected. She looked guilty, panicked, said, "We should talk." And that's when she admitted something that broke me a second time. She knew. She fucking knew. Apparently, before we got married, she went to meet Angie behind my back to get family blessing. That's when Angie, in a twisted moment of honesty, told Jess the truth about my origins, claiming I had mental health issues and that she was worried I'd turn out like Brian. She begged Jess not to tell me, said the truth would destroy me. Jess kept the secret. For 10 years, she married me, had a life with me, knowing I was the product of incest, that the man I looked up to was a predator, that I'd been lied to every single day of my life, and she let me walk blind. I lost it. I destroyed our wedding photo, tore through every drawer and closet in a rage. I told her to leave. I screamed until my throat gave out, but I wasn't done. I confronted Brian next. He didn't deny it, just sat there and said, "It was complicated. Your mother loved me. You wouldn't exist if we didn't make mistakes." Mistakes? He used the word mistakes to describe abusing a teenager and raising the child like a science experiment. When I threatened to go public, he smiled, said, "No one will believe you. You have no proof. You're an unstable man with an unstable past. I've spent the last 8 months trying to untangle what parts of me are real and what are fabricated. I took therapy seriously. I went on. Leave from work. I nearly signed into a psychiatric facility after a panic attack so violent I bit through my own tongue. Jess wants to reconcile, says she thought she was protecting me. She's pregnant now. 6 weeks. I don't know. If the child is mine, I don't know if I even want it to be. The thought of bringing a child into this bloodline makes me feel like vomiting. And now I'm left with this unbearable question. Was I wrong for pulling at the threads? Was I wrong for investigating? I tore open a wound that festered in silence. For decades, the family has collapsed. Angie is hospitalized after a breakdown. Brian is under investigation. My extended relatives have cut contact and called me a traitor. Jess's family has sided with her, calling me paranoid and cruel. So I ask you, Reddit, am I the a-hole for using a fake identity to uncover the truth about my parentage, even though it destroyed my family, my marriage, and maybe even my sanity? Am I the a-hole for telling my daughter the real reason her mom went to prison, even though it means she'll never speak to her again? I, 45mm, was a single dad for almost 15 years. I raised my daughter Lily, 18F, alone from the time she was a toddler until she graduated high school last year. She's my entire world. Every major life decision I've made since my 20s was shaped by the goal of keeping her safe, stable, and loved. And I thought I'd done a decent job, until a few weeks ago when my entire past caught up with me, in the most catastrophic way possible. and now I might have completely shattered her world. Some context: when Lily was 2, her mother, my ex-wife Megan, went to prison. Not for something petty. It was for felony charges that I'll get into later, but at the time I made a decision that I thought was best for Lily's emotional well-being. I didn't tell her what really happened. I told her Megan went away for work, and over time, that turned into she had to be somewhere far away for a long time. Eventually I admitted she was in prison, but I always said it was a mistake, or that she was mixed up with the wrong people, or in the wrong place at the wrong time. Not a total lie, but definitely not the full truth. Megan was released last year after serving her sentence. She got in touch with me through a lawyer. She wanted to reconnect with Lily. I was hesitant, but legally I couldn't stop her from trying once Lily turned 18. Megan had no parental rights left, but Lily was an adult and could choose what she wanted. I told Lily that her mom wanted to meet her. She was shocked but curious. They started talking. I watched carefully from the sidelines. Megan played the remorseful card. Lots of tears, vague stories about youthful mistakes, promises of change. Lily fell for it. And I don't blame her. Everyone wants their mom to be a good person. And Megan is, in many ways, an excellent actress. Always was. They began meeting weekly. Megan gave her gifts, expensive ones, jewelry, a MacBook, even offered to pay part of her college tuition. She showed up to her graduation. I tried to be civil, but it made my stomach turn. Not just because of what she did, but because I knew if Lily ever learned the real reason Megan went to prison, it would destroy her. It would destroy everything. Let me back up. Megan and I met in college. She was electric, the kind of girl everyone watched when she walked in. Smart, seductive, unpredictable. I was a nobody, quiet engineering student. But for some reason, she noticed me. I was pulled in fast. We got married too young. She had Lily just before graduation. I thought we'd made it. But then the cracks started showing. She started coming home late, spending money we didn't have, picking fights, disappearing for weekends. At first, I thought it was stress, postpartum depression. But one night I found her passed out in the bathroom, a needle on the counter. That was the first time she promised to get clean. I stayed. I tried to help. For Lily. We moved in with my parents. Megan got therapy, rehab. Things got better. For a while, but 2 years later she was back at it, this time harder. Not just using, but dealing. I found stashes in the house. I flushed them. She screamed, hit me, said I was ruining her life. I begged her to stop. She laughed, in my face. Then came the night that changed everything. I came home from my late shift at work. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Lily was supposed to be in her crib. Megan was supposed to be watching her. But Lily was gone. I panicked, tore the house apart, ran outside screaming her name. That's when the police arrived. They found Lily. She'd been left in the back seat of Megan's car in a parking lot outside a strip mall for 8 hours. Megan had gone inside someone's apartment to party. The only reason Lily wasn't dead was because it was raining that day, and the car windows had been cracked. She was dehydrated, hysterical, and covered in her own vomit. They arrested Megan on the spot. Turns out she'd been part of a drug trafficking ring, transporting across state lines. And worse, and this is the part I never told Lily, she'd agreed to trade Lily, our 2-year-old daughter, as collateral on a drug debt. She was going to give our daughter to a known trafficker. If she couldn't pay, I only found this out because during her trial, a cooperating witness testified. He said Megan brought Lily to a meeting and told him, if I can't pay by Monday, you can take her for the weekend. She's quiet, doesn't cry much. I threw up when I read the transcript. She was sentenced to 18 years, served 15 with parole. I told the court I wanted full custody, no contact. The judge granted it. For the next decade and a half, I tried to erase her from our lives. I built a home for Lily. She had a normal childhood. Summer camps, school plays, birthdays with homemade cakes. She always asked about her mom. I told her what I had to, that she loved her, but made mistakes. That one day she might understand. Well, that day came. Because 2 weeks ago, Lily came to me crying. She said she'd been talking with her mom more. That Megan had told her she went to prison because I framed her. That I was abusive. That I'd threatened to kill her if she took Lily, that I manipulated the courts because my father was a retired judge. He wasn't, he was a plumber. That I twisted the narrative and had always been jealous of her success. Saw red. I tried to keep calm. I told Lily that none of that was true, that I had the court records, the police reports, the witness statements. She said, then show me. So I did. I printed every page, highlighted what mattered. Let her read everything, the arrest report, the testimonies, even the quote about her being collateral. She was silent. Then she screamed, then she sobbed, then she packed a bag and said she never wanted to speak to her mother again. I thought that was it, that maybe the truth had finally freed her, but now I'm not so sure. She's been different ever since, cold withdrawn, she barely eats. She changed her college plans. She deleted all her social media. She doesn't speak to me unless necessary. Last night she said, "I wish you had just lied to me. I wish I never knew. And I don't know what to do. My family says I went too far, that I should have let her believe her mom was just troubled, not monstrous, that I poisoned her innocence, that now she'll never believe in love again. Some friends say I did the right thing, that she deserved the truth, especially after Megan started poisoning her against me, but I feel like I broke something inside her, something I can't fix. So now I'm asking Reddit, am I the a-hole for telling my daughter the full truth about why her mom went to prison, even if it means she may never recover from it? Am I the a-hole for refusing to help my sister after she destroyed my life 20 years ago, even though no one remembers what she did except me? I, 42 am, live a very quiet life now. I've learned to keep to myself, to keep my circle small, and to never ignore that little voice in the back of my head when it screams that something's wrong, because I didn't listen once, and it cost me my entire life. And now, 20 years later, that voice is screaming again. The same people are back in my life asking me to be the bigger person, to let the past go, and to help someone who, in my eyes, never deserved forgiveness. The person in question is my younger sister, Kayla, now 38F. She was always the golden child. Not just the favorite, but almost mythical in how everyone adored her. Teachers, neighbors, friends, even my own friends. She was charming, precocious, with these big doe eyes, and a way of making you feel like you were the most important person in the room, until you realized she was lying, and everything she touched eventually burned. When we were kids, I protected her. That was my role. I took the blame when she got caught stealing from stores. I covered for her when she broke curfews or skipped school. When she made up stories about bullies, I believed her and fought kids who never existed. My parents always said, "You're the older brother, she's just sensitive, be kind." So I was, even when she got away with everything. Even when she got me in trouble over and over again. But what she did when I was 22, that's something I've never spoken about publicly. Until now. I was in college, full-ride scholarship, majoring in engineering. I was engaged to my high school sweetheart, Alicia, who I had dated since we were 17. We were planning a wedding after graduation. She was my everything. Kind, soft-spoken, brilliant. She wanted to be a pediatric nurse. She'd helped me survive so many storms with my family. My friends always said we were a rare kind of love, the real deal. And maybe we were. Until Kayla decided she wanted what I had. It started with weird comments. Kayla would visit campus and flirt with my friends, including me. Jokingly, I thought. She'd say things like, "If Alicia ever dumps you, I'm next in line." Or, "How come I can't find someone who loves me like you love her?" I laughed it off. Alicia felt uncomfortable but tried to be kind. She even bought Kayla a Christmas gift that year, a silver locket. Then came the whispers. Kayla started spending time with Alicia privately. Said they were bonding. I didn't think much of it. I was drowning in coursework, finals, part-time work. I figured they were getting along. Until one night, Alicia came to my dorm sobbing, shaking, saying she couldn't marry me, that she had feelings for someone else, someone who understood her better, someone who didn't try to control her with kindness. I was stunned. We'd never fought. I wasn't perfect, but I loved her deeply. I asked if there was someone else. She nodded. I asked who? She said Kayla. I laughed at first. I thought she was messing with me, but she wasn't. She said Kayla confessed feelings, had been supporting her emotionally, that they'd kissed a few times, that Kayla made her feel seen. I was gutted, but I still didn't get angry. I begged her to reconsider, told her maybe this was a phase, maybe she was confused. I even called Kayla, and that's when the truth started leaking out. Kayla laughed, flat out laughed, told me I was pathetic, said Alicia was never really mine, that she'd always thought I was boring, that she'd helped Alicia find her real self. Then she said the thing that stuck with me forever. You think people love you because you're good. They don't. They love you because I let them. The fallout was brutal. I dropped out of school mid-semester. I couldn't focus. I lost my scholarship. Alicia and Kayla were suddenly together, parading it around like a trophy. My parents refused to pick a side. My mother said, "Love is love. Maybe they were meant to be." I moved out, cut off contact with all of them, and spiraled. For 2 years I was borderline homeless, couch surfing, working garbage jobs. Therapy helped, but slowly. I eventually clawed my way back, got an apprenticeship, rebuilt my career from scratch. I never dated seriously again. I didn't trust people anymore. Now fast forward to 3 months ago. I get a call from my mother. Kayla is sick, very sick, stage 4 cancer, no insurance, no savings, and her partner left her years ago. She's alone, she's scared, she needs help. My mother says, she asked for you. I hang up. 2 days later, my cousin sends me a link to a GoFundMe. It's Kayla, bald, thin, making a heartfelt video about regret and lost family. She says she wishes she could undo the past, that life is too short, and that she wants to make peace with the people she hurt. Everyone's eating it up. Comments are pouring in. You're so brave. Family will come around, even Alicia commented with a string of hearts. I sit in my apartment, watching this, and feel absolutely nothing. No anger, no sadness, just emptiness. The kind of emptiness that comes from surviving a war everyone else forgot ever happened. But then, it gets worse. My mom calls again, says Kayla wants to see me, that she has something to confess in person, that she's been carrying guilt and wants to die clean. I say no, Mom begs, says I owe it to her, to them, that we're family. So I go. Kayla's in a hospice room, looking like a shell of who she was. She starts crying the moment she sees me, says she's sorry, that she ruined my life, that she was jealous of me, that she didn't actually love Alicia. She just wanted to prove she could take her, that she manipulated Alicia with lies, told her I was cheating, abusive, a narcissist. None of it was true. All of it worked. She says Alicia found out the truth years later, tried to reach out, but Kayla deleted the messages, that she wanted me all to herself. I stare at her, and I say very calmly, you didn't destroy me. You just delayed me. You don't get to feel better now. She sobs. My mom begs me to forgive her. I say nothing. I leave. Now, the drama. My family is furious. They say I'm cruel, that forgiveness is the only path forward, that Kayla is dying, that she's trying. Even Alicia messaged me, said she was so sorry for everything, that she was young and confused, and that Kayla twisted everything. I told her I hoped she found peace, but that I wasn't her redemption arc. Now everyone says I'm the bitter one, that I should have been the man and extended grace, that holding on to hate is poisonous. But to me, it's not hate, it's protection of my life, my peace, my truth. So, Reddit. Am I the a-hole for refusing to forgive my dying sister, even though no one else remembers what she really did but me? Am I the a-hole for secretly recording my wife after suspecting she was lying about our son's disability and exposing her to our entire family? I, 36M, am in what most people would call a picture-perfect marriage, or at least, that's what we've always portrayed to the outside world. My wife, Lena, 34F, is smart, charming, beautiful, and has always been the golden girl in every room. We've been together for 10 years, married for 8, and we have one child together, our 6-year-old son, Mason. For context, Lena comes from a very well-off family. Her parents are the kind of people who give their kids trust fund starter kits for 18th birthdays and then pretend it made them humble. Lena is the youngest of 3 daughters, the most favored, and honestly, she knows it. She's always been incredibly image-conscious, obsessed with being the best mother, the perfect wife, the accomplished woman who has it all. I'm the opposite. Grew up working class. I have a good job in IT. I'm solid, dependable, loyal. I think Lena liked that I grounded her. We met at a charity function her sister hosted, hit it off, and for years I thought we were the dream team, until Mason was born, and everything slowly started unraveling. Mason was a quiet baby. Slept a lot, rarely cried. Lena would tell everyone he was so advanced, that he could recognize voices early, that he had perfect motor skills. I didn't question it. I was a first-time dad, just happy he seemed content. But as he grew older, I started noticing small things. Mason didn't speak much, even past age 3. He struggled with eye contact. He became obsessive about certain toys and completely lost his mind if a routine changed. When I brought this up to Lena, she dismissed me. He's just shy. Boys talk later. Don't label him. At first I agreed. Then preschool started. Mason couldn't adjust. He would cry the entire time, hit other kids, refuse to play or eat. The teacher pulled us aside and gently suggested we get him evaluated for autism. I was scared but grateful someone else saw what I saw. Lena was furious. She accused the teacher of being unqualified, said, "Everyone wants to slap a label on kids these days," and yanked Mason out of that preschool. Over the next 2 years, this happened 4 more times. 4 different schools, 4 different staff members hinting at developmental issues. Each time Lena fought back, argued, withdrew Mason, and insisted there was nothing wrong. She even started telling friends that Mason was gifted but misunderstood, that traditional schools just didn't know how to handle brilliance. She homeschooled him, posting curated Instagram stories of art projects and piano lessons. All lies. I watched my son struggle to speak in full sentences while Lena posted videos of him reciting Shakespeare. He wasn't. It was memorized mimicry from a video she fed him. I begged her to get him assessed. She told me I was weak and ashamed of our child. I said I loved him so much it hurt, and I just wanted to help him. She told me to grow a backbone. Then things took a disturbing turn. A few months ago, I found out Lena had started a parenting blog. She called it Raising Radiance. On the surface, it was about nurturing neurodivergent brilliance, but in reality, she was creating a fantasy version of Mason. She told thousands of followers our son was diagnosed as profoundly gifted, that he'd tested out of kindergarten, and that traditional education failed his genius. She monetized it. She got brand deals. She gave interviews. And she never once mentioned that Mason was completely nonverbal at home. I confronted her. She said I was jealous, that I didn't understand branding, that this was for Mason's future. College funds, networking, opportunity. I told her. It was exploitation. She said I was trying to sabotage her. The final straw came when Lena's parents offered to fund a private tutor for Mason. They'd seen the blog and were so impressed by their grandson's development that they wanted to help nurture his unique brain. I watched as Lena fabricated assessment scores, forged documents, and even emailed a local reporter offering an exclusive story about raising a child genius in the age of AI. She called herself a pioneer, I snapped. I told her this was dangerous, delusional, and cruel. She told me if I went against her, she'd claim I was abusive, that she'd take Mason and move in with her parents, that I'd never see him again. I was shaking with rage and fear, but I also realized if I didn't do something soon, Mason would never get the help he needed. So I did something I'm not proud of. I bought a small audio recorder. I started recording our conversations, specifically when she talked about lying, about forging things, about manipulating Mason for image. Over weeks, I gathered over 15 hours of audio. Then I arranged a family intervention. I told Lena we were going to my parents for dinner, but I had invited her family, my parents, and 2 of our closest mutual friends. When everyone arrived, I sat them down. Lena was confused. I played the recordings, every lie, every brag, every cruel dismissal of Mason's struggles, her mocking a preschool teacher, her admitting she photoshopped videos, her saying, "No one wants to follow a kid who needs diapers." And speech therapy. They want a prodigy. Dead silence. Her parents looked like they'd been shot. Her sister started crying. My mother left the room. Lena turned white as a sheet. She called me a traitor. She screamed that I violated her trust. I said, "You violated your son." She packed a bag and left that night. Now, the fallout. Her blog lost sponsors. A few followers turned on her, especially when someone anonymously leaked clips of the audio. She blames me, says I ruined her life. Her parents are shaken but still love her. They now visit Mason regularly and are finally seeing the truth. We've started evaluations with a real developmental specialist. Mason's now in therapy. We're getting help. But here's the thing. Some people, including Lena's sister and one of our mutual friends, say I went too far. That recording someone without their knowledge is a violation, that humiliating her publicly was vengeful, that I should have handled it privately. So I ask you, Reddit, am I the a-hole for secretly recording my wife to expose her lies, even though it was the only way to protect my son? Am I the a-hole for making my husband choose between me and his perfect sister after years of her sabotaging me behind his back? Throwaway because my husband and his family are Reddit lurkers, and I don't want to start another war. I've debated posting this for weeks. This isn't one incident, but a culmination of years of manipulation, gaslighting, and subtle cruelty. I, 34F, have been married to my husband Adam, 36M, for 9 years. We've known each other since college, got married young, and have 2 kids, 7F and 5M. Adam is genuinely a good man, smart, generous, an amazing father, but he has one massive blind spot, his sister Natalie, 38F, or as everyone calls her, Saint Natalie. Natalie is the golden child of their family. She's a single mom to a teenage son and has always been praised for how she sacrifices everything and never complains. She's a pediatric nurse, bakes cookies for her neighbors, volunteers, runs marathons for charity. I'll admit she's incredibly accomplished, but to me, she's poison, and nobody sees it but me. From day one, she didn't like me. When Adam introduced us, she smiled politely, but later told him she seems a bit needy. I only found this out months later when I overheard her say it at a party to a cousin. When I confronted Adam, he brushed it off. That's just how Nat is. She didn't mean anything by it. That became the pattern. Natalie would say or do something subtly cruel, and Adam would defend her. Always. Even when I had literal receipts. It started small. Comments about my weight. Oh, you look great. I remember when I had that postpartum pooch too. Then comments about our finances. You guys sure you can afford private school on just Adam's salary? I was in between. Jobs at the time. Once, I brought a homemade dish to a family BBQ and overheard her telling her son, "Don't eat that. Remember what happened last time?" Nothing happened last time. Nobody got sick. She just didn't want him eating my food. Adam said I was being too sensitive. Then came the more overt stuff. When I was pregnant with our second, I had severe hyperemesis. Natalie told Adam I was milking it because I didn't want to parent 2 kids. When I found that out, I cried for an hour. She told him I was emotionally manipulative and controlling because I asked him to cut back work hours during my recovery from emergency surgery. He told me she was just worried for him. I told him I was worried for us. The worst was the babysitter incident. 2 years ago, we hired a sitter for date nights. The sitter, a college student, was great. The kids adored her. Natalie, after one dinner where the sitter joined us to pick up the kids, told Adam privately that she had concerns about the sitter. Didn't elaborate. Just concerns. Adam got weird about it. Started questioning the sitter. Eventually let her go just in case. I later found out from his cousin that Natalie had told Adam the sitter was flirty with him. Total lie. The girl was 20 and barely spoke at dinner. I was furious. Adam admitted she might have exaggerated, but said, "Better safe than sorry." I said, "Or better paranoid than married, apparently." That was one of the worst fights we ever had. Things escalated recently because I finally stopped pretending. At Christmas, she made a toast to all the single moms doing it alone, unlike some people who constantly need help and praise. Everyone laughed awkwardly. I stood up, took my wine, and said, "Cheers to women who think backhanded compliments make them superior." I smiled. She froze. So did Adam. We left shortly after. Adam was livid, said I embarrassed him. I told him I'm tired of pretending his sister isn't a passive-aggressive bully. I said, "You let her say whatever she wants. You let her sabotage me. You let her twist everything so she always looks like the victim." He told me I needed therapy. I laughed in his face. Maybe I do, for staying married to someone who thinks I deserve this. We didn't speak for 2 days. When we did, I told him I'm not doing this anymore. I'm done walking on eggshells. I told him he needed to choose marriage counseling and boundaries with Natalie, or I'm gone. He was stunned, said I was overreacting, that she's just blunt. I asked him if he thought I was lying about anything. He said no, but I don't think it's malicious. That's when I realized he sees everything. He just doesn't want to deal with it. I started packing. Told him I'd take the kids to my sister's while we figure things out. That snapped him out of it. He begged me not to go. I said, "Then prove to me you see me. Choose me, not her. Not her fake innocence and her perfect image. Choose your wife." He said he'd go to counseling. Said he'd talk to Natalie. I said I'd believe it when I saw it. 2 weeks ago, he sat Natalie down with me present. He told her she's been disrespectful, condescending, and toxic to our marriage. She cried, said she never meant to hurt anyone, and that I was twisting everything. Adam said, "I've let you twist things long enough." I cried. Not because of her, because for the first time in a decade, he chose me. But now things are a mess. Natalie isn't speaking to him. His mother is furious with me, says I'm driving a wedge in their family. His aunt texted me, "You finally got what you wanted. Happy now?" I haven't responded. Adam is trying, truly trying, but it's awkward and hard. He says he misses Natalie, that he hates being in the middle. I asked him how he thinks I felt for 9 years. So, Reddit, I ask you honestly, am I the a-hole for finally making my husband choose?
Am I the a-hole for exposing my cousin's affair at her wedding? So this is a tough one, and I really need some perspective on whether I crossed the line or not. I, 30F, have always been close with my cousin, Sarah, 32F. We grew up together. We're always there for each other, and had an unspoken bond that I thought would never break. But lately our relationship has been a bit strained, and the situation escalated in a way that I never saw coming. To give some context, Sarah is getting married to a guy named Jake, 35M, whom she's been dating for about 5 years. From the outside, they seemed like the perfect couple. They're both incredibly successful. He's a lawyer, she's a high-powered executive at a tech company. They have a beautiful house, go on extravagant vacations, and have a seemingly perfect life. But despite all of this, I've known for a while that something wasn't right. A few months ago, I found out through a mutual friend that Sarah had been having an affair with one of her colleagues, Greg, 33, for about a year. I was shocked. It wasn't just a casual fling. This was a full-blown relationship. They were meeting up on business trips, sneaking around behind Jake's back, and spending a lot of time together. I was devastated for Jake, and I couldn't believe that Sarah, someone I had always considered family, would do something so hurtful. I really struggled with what to do. On one hand, I wanted to protect Jake because I knew he was in the dark about the affair, and on the other hand, I wasn't sure if it was my place to get involved. But after a lot of soul-searching and a long conversation with my fiancé, I decided that I couldn't stand by and let Sarah marry Jake without him knowing the truth. It just didn't feel right. So I made the decision to confront Sarah before the wedding. I called her and asked to meet up for coffee. She agreed, and when we sat down together, I told her that I knew about the affair. I told her that Jake deserved to know the truth before making such a huge commitment. Sarah was shocked, of course. She denied it at first, but I showed her the screenshots of the text messages between her and Greg, which were pretty damning. I told her that I couldn't, in good conscience, stand by while she lied to Jake and went forward with the wedding, as if everything was perfect. To say she was upset would be an understatement. She started crying and begged me not to tell anyone. She promised that she was going to end things with Greg before the wedding and that everything would be fine. She begged me to let her handle it in her own way, but I told her I couldn't do that. I felt like I was protecting a lie, and I knew that if I didn't tell Jake, I would never be able to live with myself. Sarah begged me not to tell Jake before the wedding. She was insistent that I let her fix things first, but I was firm. I told her that if she didn't tell him, I would. The last thing I told her before I left was, if you really loved him, you wouldn't want him to marry you under false pretenses. I left feeling like I had done the right thing, even though I knew it was going to be messy. The day of the wedding came, and I was feeling incredibly anxious. I had talked to my fiancé, and he agreed with my decision, but he was also nervous about the potential fallout. I wasn't sure how Sarah would react, but I knew deep down that Jake needed to know the truth. At the reception during the toast, I saw Jake standing there, surrounded by his family and friends all smiling and congratulating him on his big day. That's when I knew I had to act. I had to tell him the truth before he said I do. I took a deep breath, walked up to Jake, and pulled him aside. He seemed a bit confused but willing to listen. I started by saying that I needed to talk to him about something important, something that had been weighing on me. I told him that it wasn't easy, but he needed to know the truth about Sarah and Greg. I showed him the text messages and explained everything I had found out. Jake was absolutely stunned. His face went pale, and he immediately asked Sarah about it. She was crying, begging him to believe her, but the damage was done. Sarah's affair was now public, and Jake was left to process the reality of what had been going on behind his back. The wedding was immediately called off, and it was pure chaos. Guests started leaving. Sarah was inconsolable, and Jake was devastated. In the aftermath, my family has been split. Some of them are supporting me, saying I did the right thing by not letting Sarah marry Jake while hiding something so big. But others are angry with me for ruining the wedding and creating a huge scene. They've said that I should have minded my own business and let Sarah and Jake work things out on their own. Some of them even said that I didn't have the right to expose her secrets in front of everyone, and that it was unnecessary and cruel to tell Jake on the day of the wedding. Sarah has called me several times, screaming at me, saying that I ruined her life, and that I've destroyed her relationship with everyone in the family. She even said that I betrayed her in the worst way possible, and I'll never be forgiven for this. She's also cut me off completely, saying that I'm not welcome at any family events anymore. I get that she's hurt, but I still believe that what I did was the right thing. My fiancé is supportive of me, but even he is starting to worry that the fallout from this is going to have long-term consequences for my relationships with the rest of my family. We've even discussed the possibility that I might have ruined our chances of ever having a peaceful relationship with Sarah again. So, am I the a-hole for exposing my cousin's affair at her wedding? Am I the a-hole for cutting off my sister after she stole my inheritance? Okay, I need some advice, because I feel like I'm going crazy. This is a long one, but please bear with me because I'm at my wit's end. I, 29F, have always been the more responsible sibling, the one who helped my parents with the bills when they were struggling, the one who kept everyone together during tough times, and the one who always tried to make sure the family stayed close. My sister, Lily, 32F, on the other hand, has always been, well, difficult. She's the kind of person who lives in the moment, spends money she doesn't have, and has a tendency to make impulsive decisions without thinking of the consequences. Our parents, Greg and Laura, both in their mid-60s, have always been good to us. They weren't rich by any means, but they managed to build a comfortable life for themselves. After years of hard work, they were able to save up a small inheritance that they planned to split between me and Lily when the time came. The inheritance wasn't massive, but it would have been enough to put a down payment on a house for me, or maybe pay off my student loans. It was meant to be a nice cushion to help us out in the future. Now, before I go further, I need to give you some context about the family dynamics. Over the years, I've always felt like I had to carry the weight of responsibility. My parents were great, but they were aging, and my sister was, well, kind of a free spirit. I didn't mind helping out, but I did start to resent the fact that I often had to be the one to keep things together. Lily would frequently make bad financial decisions, and whenever something went wrong, she would come running to me for help. Meanwhile, I was juggling a full-time job, a side hustle, and trying to save up for a future. About 2 years ago, my father got sick. It wasn't anything life-threatening at first, but it was a wake-up call. He was diagnosed with a condition that would require him to go through regular treatments, and my mom wasn't in the best shape either. I knew their health was declining, and I tried to spend as much time with them as I could while balancing my own responsibilities. It wasn't easy, but I tried to make sure they were comfortable and had everything they needed. Lily, on the other hand, showed up only when it was convenient for her. She would come by every few months, drop off a gift, but mostly just act like everything was fine. I could tell she wasn't taking the situation as seriously as I was, and it started to eat at me. I wasn't asking her to take care of everything, but a little more effort would have been nice. The big blow came when our parents passed away within a few months of each other. My dad passed away first, and then my mum followed shortly after due to complications from her own health issues. It was devastating. I took charge of all the funeral arrangements, dealt with all the legal matters, and did everything I could to make sure they were both honored properly. It was emotionally draining, and by the time everything settled down, I was absolutely exhausted. During all of this, Lily didn't lift a finger to help. She was there in body, but she didn't contribute anything emotionally or financially. I paid for the funeral costs, managed their estate, and even dealt with a lot of the paperwork and legal stuff. Lily's involvement was limited to sitting around and offering her thoughts and prayers, but that was it. I never asked her for help, but at the same time, it felt like she was just coasting through it all while I was left to pick up the pieces. When it came time to divide the inheritance, I was hopeful. I thought, this is the one thing that will feel like we're both sharing this equally. I was aware of our financial situations, and I thought we'd split it fairly. I had been saving up for years, working hard to build a stable future for myself, while Lily had gone through job changes, made questionable financial decisions, and didn't have much to her name. Well, when the will was read, it was clear that our parents had decided to leave me the majority of the inheritance. They left me their house and a large sum of money to help me secure my future. Lily was left a much smaller amount, which was essentially a token amount to help her out, but nothing compared to what I received. I wasn't upset at the time, because I knew they trusted me to make responsible decisions with the money, and I thought it was fair considering the circumstances. But then, things took a turn. After the will reading, I found out that Lily had been sneaking around behind my back. She had gone to a lawyer, claiming that she had been wrongfully disinherited and that my parents had somehow made an error in their will. I was shocked. Lily had never shown any interest in our parents' estate, and suddenly she was trying to make a claim. She argued that our parents owed her more because of the times she'd sacrificed for them in the past, which, by the way, was complete nonsense. She barely did anything for them except show up occasionally. I confronted Lily about it, and she was unapologetic. She said that she deserved more, that she had been neglected growing up, even though she'd been given plenty of opportunities, and that I was being selfish by not sharing more with her. I told her that the inheritance was not a gift. It was something our parents had worked hard for, and I wasn't going to let her take advantage of it. That's when she revealed the bombshell. She had secretly taken some of the money that was supposed to be mine. She had accessed one of our parents' accounts and transferred a portion of the inheritance to her own account. I was livid. She had stolen from me, and she wasn't even ashamed of it. When I confronted her about it, she shrugged and said, "You have plenty. It's not like you'll miss it." I was beyond furious at that point. This wasn't just a small mistake or a misunderstanding. She had actively stolen from me, and the betrayal was unbearable. I told her I wanted nothing to do with her, that I was done. I cut off all contact with her and made it clear that I wouldn't be speaking to her until she returned the money. My family, of course, is split on this. Some of them say that I should have been more understanding, that it was just a moment of weakness for Lily. Others say I was right to cut her off and that she deserved to be held accountable. Some of my relatives are even taking sides, saying that I should be the bigger person and forgive her for the sake of family. To make matters worse, Lily has been going around telling people that I'm a greedy, heartless person for taking everything and not sharing with her. She's been spreading lies about me, saying that I'm cold and uncaring for not giving her more of the inheritance. It's become a full-blown family drama. So, am I the a-hole for cutting off my sister after she stole my inheritance?